PS Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
Chapter 208. The Dongfeng Corps' convoy entered the city of Hobin without any hindrance. The police battalion and public security brigade here had already received the news and made way for this team that had just turned Kokong upside down. Everyone cooperated very well, and this cooperation was not only because of authority but also because of fear. What a joke! Who wouldn't be afraid of death? Bai Ying was not afraid of death, but they drove a fire truck directly into his face. They are all fake. There is no water in them, but gasoline. In short, at this time, no one cares about face or rules and other intangible things. All they can do is to hand over all the intelligence in their hands to the Eastern Corps and then retreat to the periphery to continue vigilance, and the Dongfeng Corps will make the final decision. Bai Suoqing's family lived in a monastery on the edge of Hobin. They bribed various connections and should have been able to evacuate smoothly to Gongno, and then leave northern Myanmar along Highway 34 and go to Thailand. According to his plan, with each checkpoint he crossed, he would provide the Burmese army with access to a portion of his property. When he went to Thailand, his assets were basically gone. This is buying your life. It sounds simple and crude, but it is actually very useful. However, Bai Suoqing never thought that his location would be leaked by someone with ulterior motives. The motive of that person is unknown, but in any case, guided by this intelligence, the Dongfeng Corps did successfully block Bai Suoqing before he left Reborn. Looking at the monastery in the distance, Chen Chen had the illusion that he was in another world. Once upon a time, the bandits of Wananai also regarded Minglang Temple as their shelter, hiding inside and resisting stubbornly. The current situation is exactly the same. How do we fight? Should we just charge forward? Sure, Dakai, who was standing next to Chen Chen, asked. I don't know. Chen Chen shook his head slightly and replied, Our key issue now is not the hostages in the monastery, but the interests of the Burmese army. Bai Suoqing spent money to buy his life. This trick is quite useful. If we kill him, it will be equivalent to cutting off Lao Mian's source of income, which will lead to a series of unnecessary troubles in the future. So, why didn't Lao Mian just arrest him from the beginning? If he interrogated him slowly, he would have been able to find out the truth, right? Who knows? Maybe it's a relatively easy method for them. Chen Chen didn't explain everything because there was no need for Dakai to understand something so overly complicated. However, based on the information he had, at this point in 2010, the interest network represented by Bai Suoqing was not very complicated. If we let him develop for another 10 years, until the fraud reaches a certain scale, Tether is launched, and the Southeast Asian Integrated Money Laundering Alliance is born, then we will really have no way to start. After a brief pause, Chen Chen continued, We must kill him, and we have to kill him quickly. As for offending the old Burmese, there is a way. Leave someone at his home. Who to keep? Bai Ying-song? Or choose two of the four daughters to stay? Bai Ying-ping and Bai Ying-gai. I think it's feasible. Sure, Dakai nodded and continued. Leave Bai Suoqing with a thought, and with the threat of force, his cooperation will only be higher. This will not affect Lao Myanmar's continued gains, and it will also achieve our goals. But I have no idea who to choose. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief, then continued. Now, we have to take down the monastery first. The situation is not complicated. The number of armed personnel is small, and their equipment level is average. I haven't played CQB in a while. Can I still play it? Everyone smiled at each other, and everything was said without words. 20 minutes later, the attack on the monastery started on time. The action process is actually really unremarkable because there is no thrilling close combat assault at all. The entire monastery has a very small building area, divided into 3 floors, covering a total area of less than 400 square meters. There are probably more than a dozen rooms, but the ceiling is also very poor. Chen Chen finally found an opportunity to implement the tactic he had mentioned long ago, throwing smoke bombs all over the street. Li Bang held an MM-1 filled with smoke bombs and fired a round into the monastery from a distance of about 100 meters. Then more than 20 people from the Dongfeng Corps threw 2 smoke bombs each from different directions, directly sealing off the entire monastery. In fact, these smoke bombs were their last in stock. After a series of battles, even though the Dongfeng Corps continued to replenish its ammunition, it was still close to running out of ammunition and food. But fortunately, it is not a waste to use it in this last battle. After throwing all the smoke bombs, Chen Chen directed Li Bang to add a few thermite grenades on the periphery. The blazing flames and the smoke that could not be dispersed at all made the people trapped in the monastery completely confused. They were like field mice trapped in their holes when they were being smoked in the countryside. They didn't know where to run, or whether they should run at all. When they finally couldn't hold on any longer, the people in the monastery ran out one after another, covering their noses. They had basically no ability to resist. The Dongfeng Corps, who were waiting for them, shot them one by one. All those with weapons were killed on the spot. The Bai family themselves were smart enough not to take up their guns, and finally survived until the smoke cleared and everyone was captured. Chen Chen first sent away the monks in the monastery and asked them to go to the hospital on their own. Then it was the matter of the Dongfeng Corps and Bai Suoqing. You can't kill me. The look in Bai Suoqing's eyes when he looked at Chen revealed undisguised resentment. But underneath the resentment, there was also an imperceptible fear. I have reached an agreement with the Myanmar side. They need me to be alive, otherwise they will get nothing. Kill me, and you will be their enemy. There's really no need for us to do this. I've already admitted defeat, so why do you still want to kill me? Chen Chen shook his head indifferently and replied, Come on, ask the person next to me. We ran away from the Allied Army's camp, and we admitted defeat. Why did you want to kill us all? Their families didn't do anything wrong, did they? We even helped you a lot. I just want to ask, Why are you putting the blame on us? Do you know how Sherdakai's family died? Do you know how Li Bang's family died? You don't know. You think that something like this will never happen to your daughter, your mother, or your entire family, so you are so reckless. But I just want you to know that everyone is the same. Everyone is equal in front of me. Bai Xiaohen Vesilence. After a long while, he finally spoke. That was all done by the people below. You can't put all the blame on me. And you were just minor characters back then. Even if I knew, why would I care about your life or death? This place is just like that. No one will care if a few minor characters die. Isn't it the same for you? Those soldiers you killed, don't they have families? Chen Chen smiled. He never expected that Bai Suoqing could come up with such a reason to pressure him. Maybe for some saints, this reason is enough to make them break down. But for Chen Chen? Just ridiculous. He took a long breath and replied, "You really look down on me a little too much. Do you think I'm the kind of person who would be trapped by your words? I have killed people too. I have even killed many more than you. But I only kill people on the battlefield. That's the difference between me and you. Another point, didn't you say that no one would care about the death of a minor character? So who do you think is the minor character now?" After he finished speaking, Bai Suoqing stood there in shock. He suddenly realized that he really no longer had any bargaining chips to negotiate with the man in front of him. This Chen Chen, the leader of the Dongfeng Corps, does he really care about the Burmese army's opinion? Maybe he cares, but at least he doesn't care enough to let himself go. What are you going to do? Bai Suoqing asked dejectedly. It's simple. Someone can be alive in your family. But you have to choose for yourself. And you can only choose one. Killing someone and destroying their heart. Bai Suoqing raised his head suddenly. Bai Ying-song on the side wanted to resist, but was knocked down by Li Bang, who was prepared with the butt of his gun. Several gazes filled with fear and anger fell on Chen Chen, but he didn't care at all. Choose. I'll give you a minute. If you don't choose, I will kill you from left to right. Number 3, help Mr. Bai over here and move him to the far right. Clear. Shirdakai picked up Bai Suoqing and threw him to the far right of the team, but at this time, he could no longer kneel. No one dared to speak. Only Bai Ying-song was cursing angrily. Chen Chen didn't attack him because his reaction was actually part of the torture. Very cruel. But is it really necessary to sympathize with his family? There is no need to talk about the future. Just the crimes they have committed already in ancient times would be enough to cause torture to death many times, and then the entire 9 clans would be killed. Killing someone means paying with one's life, which is only natural. Bai Suoqing looked at Bai Ying-song blankly. The latter probably thought that he would be the one who survived, so he became more unscrupulous. But what Bai Suoqing said next made Bai Ying-song stunned. Ying Lan must live. Everyone's eyes instantly turned to Bai Suoqing. Chen Chen nodded slightly and said approvingly, "A very good choice. She is the only one who is relatively clean and has enough political resources. Others are either too small or not clean. If Bai Ying Lan is alive, she can even use your remaining resources to continue trading with Lao Mian. Maybe she can make a comeback one day. I guess you would choose this just now. It's very smart. Do you want to do it yourself?" As soon as the words fell, the prisoners immediately became chaotic. There was no need to hesitate any longer. Chen Chen made a gesture and gunshots rang out. Everybody fell down, except Bai Ying Lan and Bai Suoqing. The two looked at each other in fear, with blood even seeping from their eyes. "It's over." Chen Chen looked at Bai Suoqing and said, "It's over." Bai Suoqing nodded, desperately, but calmly preparing to face his own end. The next second, gunshots rang out. However, the person who fell was not Bai Suoqing, but Bai Ying Lan. A bloody hole appeared between her eyebrows. Bai Suoqing looked at Chen Chen in astonishment. Chen Chen shook his head and said, "I still think it's better to kill him. There are many opportunities to make money in northern Myanmar. You can earn that little bit of money quickly. At worst, you can let Peng Jiaxing make up for it. You're just a nobody anyway. Who cares?" Bai Suoqing's eyes were bloodshot. "Chen Chen, you must not." Bang. Short bursts of gunfire from FN-57 rang out, and everything returned to calm. At this point, the thermite bomb had gone out. The wind from further east blew to Kokong, blowing away the smoke that was surrounding the monastery. It was noon, and in the monastery, the monks who had just been released were fulfilling their ministerial duties diligently and responsibly, driven by faith. The bells rang more quickly than usual, and under the clear sky with the scorching sun, the white doves that were kept in the monastery and had been driven away by gunfire and smoke flew back again. They landed around the corpses, walked curiously, and tentatively pecked at the splattered flesh and blood. That was not to their liking, so they flew away again. But their sharp beaks and wings were already stained with blood. In the whiteness, there are spots of sin. Chen Chen sighed and said, "What a pity. Pigeons don't eat meat." Bai Suoqing's death was quite sudden for the entire Kokong, especially when his entire family died together, which made it even more sudden. After all, he was too superstitious about his superpowers and thought that since he had paid the fine, he was completely safe. But he didn't expect that some of the hatred in this world really cannot be resolved by fines. After he met his end, the Dongfeng Corps finally completed a stage of its mission. From the time they escaped from the Allied forces to the time they rescued their families and completed their revenge, it took 7.5 months, and they finally removed the heavy mountain that weighed on the foursome. Well, to be precise, it was not removed, but crushed. But of course, it's not over yet. Killing the Bai is easy. It's just a matter of fighting. But after killing him, there are more problems to deal with. Or in other words, the battle on the battlefield is over, but the political and economic battles must continue. However, we can take our time. Standing in front of the monastery, Chen Chen looked at the bodies on the ground, scratched his head in confusion, and said, "We still have to take the bodies away. These cars are not easy to load. Let's get a new car. What are you taking it away for?" The jackal at the side asked in confusion. Of course, it is to create the illusion that Bai Suaching is still alive. As long as he is alive, then not being able to get the money is not our problem, but the Myanmar side's own problem. Bai Suaching ran away and hid himself. Can the blame still be put on us? This time, Shu Dakai didn't need to speak. Bao Chidu had already figured out the key to the problem. After listening to his words, the jackal nodded thoughtfully and continued. This is a good idea, but it's not that easy to make it believable. The Burmese are not stupid. How could they not know that we have killed Bai Suaching? It's because they're not stupid that they don't care whether Bai Suaching is dead or not. Chen Chen interrupted the jackal and explained. Bai Suaching's main profit comes from his assets, not his savings. If he can take over the assets, he has actually already received the bulk of the profits. As for the remaining deposits and other valuables hidden away, it would be nice for the Burmese army to have them, but if they don't really care. So, we have to give them a plausible reason so that they can deal with the real bosses at the higher levels. Bai Suaching ran away. This is a good reason. I understand. Then take it away. The jackal heaved a sigh of relief. He really didn't quite understand this kind of twists and turns. Then, let's go find a car. What car did Bai Suaching drive here? As soon as Chen Chen finished speaking, some clever mercenaries in the Dongfeng Corps had already driven Bai Suaching's car over. Their convoy had 4 cars, all luxury cars. 3 Lexus LX 570s were conspicuous enough, and one was a Maybach 2009 Zeppelin, which was definitely not common in northern Myanmar. This thing was fundamentally different from the Rolls-Royce and Lexus that were common in northern Myanmar. This is because there is no possibility of it being smuggled into the country after being purchased for free, but it is definitely purchased through formal channels. If calculated according to Chen Chen's memory, this thing would be worth at least tens of millions of RMB. I have to say, Bai Suaching is really fucking rich. But this also illustrates another point. Bai Suaching really didn't consider the issue of being hunted down at all, or was this actually part of his escape plan? Carry all your valuables with you, so that if something goes wrong on the road, you can use your car as cash equivalent? In any case, this is considered a windfall. Not to mention whether the Dongfeng Corps will use this type of car in the future. Even if it is sold at a discount, for cars will cost at least 1.5 million US dollars, right? If you get it, you earn it. Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction and ordered his team members to stuff the bodies of the main members of the Bai family into a Lexus and equip the car with a top-level 6 soul ring bonus. Subsequently, the Dongfeng Corps assigned 4 people to drive, and the size of the convoy expanded to 11 vehicles. Since the Maybach did not have much off-road capability, this time they could only move along the main road as much as possible. It took them 8 hours to walk the 200-kilometer straight-line distance. They passed many checkpoints on the way. According to Bai Suaching's plan, he should have left a sum of money at each checkpoint. However, with the brave warriors leading the way, the guards at the outpost tacitly gave up blocking the way, and the journey was relatively smooth. At around 9 o'clock in the evening, the Dongfeng Corps arrived in Myanmar. They came and went in a hurry, and each retreat was extremely decisive and resolute. By the time they entered Myanmar, the defenders of the 7th Brigade were even a little nervous about this unfamiliar convoy. However, now it only takes a word for Chen Chen to pass the level, and he no longer needs to use 40 fire and smoke bombs. After returning to the villa, Chen Chen finally breathed a sigh of relief. This is what it feels like to be at home. The personnel who stayed behind in the Dongfeng Corps had already received the news and came to welcome them. Apart from the families of Bao Qi and Li Bang, Sang Yi was the most excited. His rhabdomyolysis had finally recovered a little, and although he still walked with a limp, it was obvious that he had no sequelae. Captain, you guys are finally back. I missed you so much. Sang Ye's expression was extremely sincere. If he wasn't afraid of using too much force, he would have put on a tearful scene. Chen Chen rolled his eyes and replied, "Don't talk about these useless things. Let's get to work and count the spoils." "Yes, at your command." Everyone immediately started to work. The bodies of the Bai family were carried out first, and after being stripped of their clothes, they were thrown directly into the Mekong River. Burial was definitely impossible, and there was no need to pulverize their bones and scatter their ashes. Just like Wang Mia, they could simply be fed to the fish. Afterwards, all the equipment was unloaded, and the 4 luxury cars were searched thoroughly. During this inspection, the Dongfeng Corps once again discovered a surprise. Spread across 4 vehicles, there is a total of over 110 kilograms of gold. Moreover, it appears to be high-purity gold. According to the current gold price, this batch of gold alone is worth about 5 million US dollars. This is the real bribe. It is impossible that Bai Suaching would not take any valuables with him. Chen Chen smiled. After this battle, Xiaoyu had 1 million, and we seized 5 million. Even if the car was not sold, we would still have 6 million US dollars in revenue. After the commission is divided, the operating cost can still be increased by 3 million. Compared with the initial operating cost of 1 million US dollars for ammunition supply and equipment preparation, the profit margin is as high as 200%. Now, the cash flow of the entire operating expenses has reached a staggering 11 million US dollars. Even if the Z9 is not discounted, after excluding the complex weapons and equipment that will definitely not be carried, this money is more than enough. After all, when Brother and I in Mali, Africa bought a Z9, it was only about 1,200 US dollars, and this price included the weapon system and training for pilots and ground crew. All I want is the basic version. Even if it comes with training services, the price shouldn't exceed 9 million US dollars, right? Well, if it really exceeds the price, I will have to have a good talk with Xiaoyu. What? You want her to give it away for free? This is a bit ridiculous. Everything the two sides have communicated before is actually not about the helicopter itself, but the helicopter export license. The brother from the north is generous, but he is not a sucker. This thing is different from the Mengsher. The first generation of Mengsher is cheap and not sensitive, so just give it away. You still have to be careful with helicopters. After carefully counting the money in his hand, Chen Chen felt relieved. What made him feel even better was a series of accounting documents in the glove box of the Maybach. It contains all of Bai Suoqing's business details. It must have been falsified. The core information would not remain on paper. But as long as it exists, it is a treasure for those who are interested. Handing this thing over to Lao Mian is also an explanation to them. There is no XX post office that can reach everywhere in northern Myanmar. So Chen Chen simply gave the delivery job to Sang Yi. It was not dangerous anyway, so it might as well let him and another person left behind do something. After all the spoils were collected, Chen Chen realized that although he couldn't say that he had gained a lot from this battle, he definitely didn't lose anything. One Type 87 howitzer, one M120, and four 416 Hong Kong dollars rifles. These are all things that are in short supply. In addition to the backup plan left by Peng Diren, there will definitely be more high-quality equipment coming in the future. This alone is already very satisfying. As for the weapons and ammunition that were consumed, just replenish them slowly. Anyway, there is no rush to go to war again. After everything was done, it was already 11 o'clock in the evening. The Dongfeng Corps gathered again, and even the 2 wounded soldiers who had been evacuated earlier were present. Chen Chen was too lazy to think about it, so he just checked the gold price of the day on the internet. Without wasting any time, he got a scale and distributed the money on the spot. The scene was so lively that it was about to explode. What does it mean to use a big scale to separate gold and silver? This is literally a big scale to separate gold and silver. The finance department calls out the names of each person one by one and calculates on the spot according to the rules that have been announced long ago and the formulas that have been written in Excel. The calculation process is projected on the big screen in the command room. Each person gets exactly how much money he or she is supposed to get without any water or room for any behind-the-scenes manipulation. There is no salary confidentiality principle. If you feel dissatisfied, you can question it on the spot, but of course no one will question it. Although the wage system of the Dongfeng Corps looks complicated, its essence does not deviate from the traditional commission system of the mercenary group. It just adds some simple bonus conditions. In general, everyone is relatively equal. The mercenaries who were already accustomed to this system adapted quickly. After receiving the heavy load of gold, everyone was smiling happily. Some of them even joked with each other, but the atmosphere was of course still extremely harmonious. After this wave, everyone finally gained weight, excluding disability pensions. Each of the 20 peripheral team members received a bonus of more than 50,000 US dollars, and some with outstanding performance could even receive 70,000 US dollars, mainly those who drove fire trucks. Plus the basic attendance bonus everyone gets. They get a lot of money for one mission, which they could only get 2 or 3 years ago. Who wouldn't be happy? Ah, you said the head of the group and several captains get more? If you can do it, you can lead the team, you can fix the fire truck, you can lead the charge of the old Burmese military camp. No one is that stupid. Mercenaries, although simple-minded, know very well what kind of money they can make by following someone. In the warm atmosphere, the money-sharing ceremony did not end until 1 a.m. Chen Chen told the mercenaries to keep the gold and sell it slowly, so as not to bring down the gold price in Munka all at once, and everyone agreed. After everyone reluctantly left, Jackal quietly walked to Chen Chen and said, "Chen Chuan, I find that you're like a perfect person sometimes." "Why?" Chen Chen asked doubtfully. "I'm not talking about fighting, I'm talking about running this business. You seem to have some talent, especially in manipulating people's hearts. Your profit-sharing rules have a lot of room for maneuver. You could have paid more or less, but you stuck to this number. The income from a mission will allow these mercenaries to have no worries about food and clothing for the next 1 to 2 years. It gives them enough sense of security, but it also whets their appetite. You have easily solved the problem of mercenaries leaving the team after getting rich. What's more important is that you actually gave out gold. I can't think of such an operation even if I rack my brains. The hoarding property of gold will inevitably slow down their consumption rate, thus maintaining the team's hunger to the greatest extent possible. I was wondering, if you hadn't been a mercenary, would you have become rich by doing business?" Chen Chen smiled slightly and replied, "Who knows? Didn't you ask me to go to Wall Street before? Maybe I should go there? If you go, you will be the real wolf of Wall Street. Maybe you'll bite all those capitalists to death. But forget it. Compared to the sinking of capitalist ships, I would rather see the sinking of mercenaries, PMCs, warlords, and arms chiefs. Aren't you afraid that I will steal your business?" Chen Chen asked curiously. The Jackal couldn't help but roll his eyes. "What kind of joke are you telling me? Let's not talk about how long it will take you to achieve the same scale as Chasely, and let's not talk about the fact that even if you succeed, the direction may not conflict with Chasely. Just one reason. I am from Chaisley, but Chaisley is not mine. What does it have to do with me?" "Transparent." Chen Chen gave Jackal an approving look and said, "Now that you've said that, if I really do it in the future, don't help Chaisley to do it to me. Don't worry. Even if the day comes when war breaks out, I can still tell you one thing. I'm on your side." "Are our feelings so deep?" Chen Chen asked in surprise. "Do you think I'm Bao Xiaomei? Throwing myself into your arms right away?" Jackal spread his hands helplessly and explained, "I made this judgment based on commercial interests. What I mean is, if you really want to get involved in this business, if you really have a conflict of interest with Chaisley, I will choose the side with a greater chance of winning. You know what? I'm the complete opposite of you. I appear to have a background, but in fact I have none. You appear to have none, but anyway, there's no one behind me. I'm just a tool. Since it is a tool, it should be thrown away after use. Then I have to find a way out for myself? Wouldn't it be great if you were willing to give me a chance?" "Understood." Chen Chen let out a long sigh and replied with a smile, "Maybe we could be business partners in the future." The jackal nodded solemnly and agreed. Yes, business partner. But we can also be friends. Jackal was probably shocked by the scene of Chen Chen's generous sharing of strength, and he also truly saw the commercial potential of this mercenary group, or PMC company. Before this, no matter how powerful the Dongfeng Corps was, his judgment of it was limited to armed forces. But now, after seeing Chen Chen's precise management of profit distribution, he finally decided to get involved. This is actually easy to understand. Where can you really make money? Not in large, mature, highly organized companies, but in wildly growing entrepreneurial teams. Obviously, the Dongfeng Corps is such an entrepreneurial team. Having just resolved the survival crisis, he established his own base through brutal means, accumulated the funds necessary for subsequent development, and also established an intricate network of relationships. It can be said that this small team has accumulated all the conditions necessary to grow bigger. The moat has been completely built, and the process of building a high wall has been completed. If they really want to commercialize it, who can beat them? So for the jackals who are in the same place as the Dongfeng Corps, the choice is actually very clear. That is, try to make use of the friendships you have established in the early stages to get in touch with them, and find ways to do some money-making hookups behind the company's back. Such hookups don't need to be too deep or too strong. Just hooking up is enough. After talking with Chen Chen, although the thread has not been completely connected, the end of it has been pulled out. That's enough. The jackal was in an extremely happy mood. He walked out of the Dongfeng Corps' villa cheerfully, applauding himself countless times in his heart for his keen eye. Back then, the Dongfeng Corps was still a small corps of only 4 people. It couldn't even be called a corps, and could only be classified as a gun corps together with those second-rate stragglers. But I seized that opportunity and laid the foundation for cooperation with them in advance. When they conquered Wan and I, didn't many people think it was just a coincidence? If I hadn't overcome all objections and won them over with a few pieces of equipment, how could we have the current situation? If it weren't for the fact that Chasely couldn't get too close to the Dongfeng Corps, the headquarters might have already sent in senior officials to maintain the relationship with the Dongfeng Corps. My goodness, if I'm not a genius, then who is? Thinking of this, Jackal couldn't help but want to give himself a certificate with the words "the best talent scout in northern Myanmar" written on it. Well, Mu Gui's Peng Shuqing can be considered as such, but compared to myself, he is still far behind. The Jackal's footsteps became lighter and lighter. Looking at his back, Chen Chen couldn't help but laugh. But of course, there is also some complacency. Oh, in a place like this, what's the point of being recognized by women? To make a tough guy with a gun willingly bow down at your feet is to be truly powerful. A man who makes a woman kneel down is not a real man. A real man should make other men bend down. Chen Chen shook his head gently, dispelling the slightly messy images in his mind, and then walked back into the villa, ready to pack up and have a good rest. He was really too tired during this period of time. It has always been a high-intensity battle and an extremely tense game. His body could still hold on, but the result of his nerves being tense for so long was that once he relaxed, he would even feel tired and dizzy. When he walked into the living room, several members of the core group of the Dongfeng Corps all stood up from the sofa and made a welcoming gesture. What? Chen Chen asked in confusion. You guys don't have anything else to do you? If you have anything, let's talk about it tomorrow. I'm going to sleep. After hearing his words, several people were also puzzled. What's going on? What happened? Why are you all gathered together for no reason? We're waiting for supper. Why are you standing up for supper? As soon as these words were spoken, the others were also stunned. Yes, why are you standing up? However, as soon as Chen Chen walked in, his body stood up as if it was out of control. There was no fluctuation in his heart. It was more like an instinct. Looking at their reactions, Chen Chen's eyes changed slightly. He knew that his core team was formed. This is a very inconspicuous detail, but it just illustrates one thing. In addition to the deep friendship brought by fighting side by side, these people under his command have already developed reverence for him. The respect of subordinates for their superiors is something that a team absolutely cannot lack. No matter how good the relationship is, you cannot break the rules. This is the most basic principle. Many people will actively pursue this kind of principle, but the pressure of authority and interest does not bring awe, but only restraint. Chen Chen did not pursue it deliberately, but on the contrary, this principle was established naturally. Very good. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief and said, I'm going to take a shower first. What's for supper? Chicken pho soup, cooked by my dad. Bao Qi replied. Then leave a bowl for me, I'll have some too. After saying that, Chen Chen turned and walked into the room, taking a comfortable shower. The FN-57 was placed on the sink next to him, with the safety always on. However, this gun is a double-action structure, so it is still very safe. After drying his body, he washed and dried the holster. By the time he put on his clothes again, slung his gun over his shoulder, and went out, more than half an hour had passed. In the living room, no one had started eating yet. You took too long to take this bath. Luckily, you didn't put powder in beforehand, or it would have all broken. Bao Qi brought the bowl to Chen Chen, and his father Bao Yucheng swiftly took out a bowl of boiled vermicelli and put it into the soup, then scooped a spoonful of chicken for Chen Chen and sprinkled a few chili peppers on it. After taking a bite, Chen Chen's face was covered with sweat. It was a waste of time to take a bath. Uncle's cooking skills are pretty good. Chen Chen exclaimed in admiration. No. I heard from Bao Qi that the commander is also an expert at cooking. I'll make do. No need to be so polite. Just call me Chen Chen. Chen Chen answered modestly and reservedly, and then everyone started to use their chopsticks. No one spoke, and the sound of clattering was heard everywhere. Li Bang's sister Li Zhu also ate supper with a bunch of men. At this time, she finally regained some of the innocence that a little girl should have. Everyone took good care of her, and she could feel the care. Although her behavior was restrained and timid, it was still very affectionate. After finishing a bowl of noodles, Chen Chen sighed with satisfaction. Looking at Li Zhu, who was still sipping soup, Chen Chen thought for a moment and then said, Lin He, during this time, find a way to teach Li Zhu how to read. Then, Dakai will contact the school and send her to school. Go check out the environment yourself first. The schools in Minka are a bit hard to describe. If it doesn't work out, you should just go back and study on your own. There was absolutely nothing wrong with what Chen Chen said, because although Minka did have several schools, the quality of most of them was extremely poor. The rich and upper classes here generally do not send their children there, but instead send them to the military academy run by the 7th Brigade, or directly to Mingbin or Jingdong. Now, none of the three options are feasible, so we can only make do with what we have now. Understood. I'll arrange it. Sure, Dakai nodded in reply, and Li Bang showed a look of gratitude on his face. Brother Chen, thank you. What's the matter? Chen Chen waved his hand, and after a brief thought, he continued, let's just do it all at once. If other people in the Corps already have children, we can help them solve their problems as well. How many are there in total? Not many, 3. The white dog answered. The rumor that mercenaries have no families is actually completely unfounded, at least in northern Myanmar. Because for many people, being a soldier and fighting in a war is just a special profession. How could it affect their lives? You said you were worried that after you die, the money you worked so hard to earn would be inherited by others? Brother, in this shabby place, if you don't become a mercenary, won't you die? Therefore, throughout northern Myanmar, although the family-forming rate of mercenaries is much lower than that of other professions, it is still quite high overall. The Lion Corps has previously brought in many family members, including some descendants, and solved their resettlement issues. Without any worries, the combat effectiveness of the Corps will not decrease, but will increase instead. That's easier to solve. Go and make arrangements. White Dog will help us make arrangements. No problem. Bai Go answered immediately, and then he raised a new question. There are still many problems in life that need to be solved, including housing, which we should also optimize. At present, people live in scattered areas, and their living conditions are relatively poor. Now that everyone has money, they have to solve this problem. My suggestion is to simply plan a unified residential area, which can be located on the burnt land to the east of the villa, and build a batch of simple houses first, and then gradually optimize it later. Bai Go's suggestion coincided with Chen Chen's previous idea, so Chen Chen did not refuse. However, the basic principle is still to be voluntary and not to have compulsory compounds. Chen Chen had a rough idea of the core problem at hand, so he said no more. He wiped the sweat from his head and went back to his room to rest. He slept for a total of 8 hours. When he woke up the next day, it was already past 11 o'clock in the morning. After walking out of the room, the first thing he saw was a few people who were already waiting in the living room, drinking tea and chatting. Xu Qingpeng, Bupa He, and Xiao Mei Bao. The three of them all had relaxed expressions on their faces. Not the kind of relaxed expression they pretended to have, but a genuine look of relaxation, as if they were visiting a friend's home. However, when Chen Chen appeared in front of them, this sense of ease was instantly broken. It's not a matter of being reserved, it's more of a sense of respect. Mr. Shipwreck, good morning. Bao Xiaomei was the first to stand up and greet him, and then she said in a familiar manner, Can I call you Mr. Chen now? Have the problems at home been completely resolved? Chen Chen waved his hand, not commenting on Bao Xiaomei's attempt to build relationships. It doesn't matter. It's all right. When did you come? You've been waiting for a long time, haven't you? Seeing his easygoing attitude, the three of them were relieved. Bupa also came forward, shook hands with Chen Chen and said, It didn't take long to wait. Nothing much happened. It was quite leisurely to drink tea. Mr. Shipwreck, congratulations on your triumphant return. Bupa always uses the same rhetoric, nothing new, but he certainly never makes mistakes. Chen Chen responded with a smile, never showing any bullying attitude. Captain He, every time you say triumph, we fight well. It seems you have good luck. Ha ha ha. That's because Mr. Shunchuan is so powerful. This battle is really satisfying. Although we don't get along with Peng Jiaxing, Bai Suoqing and his gang are still very hateful. Kill them, and I'll clap my hands and say good deed. Bupo expressed his attitude in just 2 sentences and calmly removed this issue from the complicated struggle situation in northern Myanmar, describing it as a personal grudge. I have to say that he is much better than Bao Xiaomei in this regard. Complimenting people in a way that makes them happy is also a skill. Seeing that the two were chatting well, Peng Shuqing finally found a chance to interrupt, and his entry point was even more precise than Bupa's. He said, Shipwreck, I came here for some serious business this time. Didn't you destroy your Predator? The company has considered it and thinks this car is pretty good. They plan to import 2 more later. We don't have any use for the one we have right now, so let's give it to you. How about that? It's still the same price, $1.6 million with a weapon station. It's too expensive, Boss Peng. Chen Chen laughed and immediately bargained. We didn't have good stuff before, so it was okay to buy a car for 1.6 million yuan, but now the price-performance ratio is a bit low. Then let's do some replacement. You surrendered a few Lexus cars, and I don't think they are bulletproof. It's useless for you to have so many. 2 cars, plus $1 million Predator will give it to you. Peng Shuqing gave Chen Chen a look that said, You know it, I know it too. Chen Chen naturally followed suit and decisively extended his hand and replied, Then I'll just take the loss. Win-win-win-win. Peng Shuqing's attitude was cautious, but the intention to show goodwill behind his actions was still very obvious. This is a kind gesture, and Chen Chen will definitely not reject his kindness. Thus, the atmosphere between the 4 of them became harmonious, and they sat back on the sofa without having to talk about more so-called business, because their presence here was actually business. They drank tea until 12 o'clock, and Bupa stood up and pretended to leave. Chen Chen was naturally not ignorant, so he kept him and asked Bao Yucheng to prepare lunch. The few of them had an ordinary family dinner. After the meal, the relationship between the four people, or the four parties, just settled down. Originally, the Wa state represented by Bao Xiaomei should have the highest status, which also conforms to the so-called befriend distant ones and attack nearby ones rule. But due to various complicated reasons, Chen Chen was unwilling to have too close contact with her too early, and instead made her a supporting role. Of course, basic respect and warmth are still required. This isn't a blind date. This is a tacit convergence of the four major forces. If they really favor one over the other, then collapse won't be far away. Overall, it was a pleasant meal. After they said goodbye, Chen Chen received an unexpected call. He Banxiong's phone number. The other party also received the news from Kokong. He first expressed concern and congratulations like he Bupa, and then he openly and secretly informed Chen Chen about the situation in southern Shan State, Tachalike, in Thailand. The king of Thailand has not yet come back to life, and the situation remains at a stalemate. He was not in a hurry, and he also wanted to persuade Chen Chen not to be anxious. Of course, Chen Chen was not in a hurry, as his base was not in Jingdong. At the end of the call, He Banxiong gave Chen Chen a little surprise. During the siege of Jingdong, he intercepted a so-called arms smuggling team on the Mongol highway. The team was very small and only smuggled 4 guns. 4 HK-416s. He Banxiong knew that Chen Chen was using 416 Hong Kong dollars, so he subconsciously thought of the Dongfeng Corps. Now, these 4 guns have been sent to Mengka. Chen Chen couldn't help but laugh. He said, "Commander, if they find out again, just let them go. The gun belongs to the Shadow Corps. It's better for you not to have any big grudges with them for now." In response to Chen Chen's advice, He Banxiong laughed and replied, "I know they are from the Shadow Corps. It's not like I don't know them. What does it matter? I can do things that are inconvenient for you to do. You are a mercenary group and have no jurisdiction, but I do. Don't worry, bro. This has nothing to do with you. If they're still lucky, I will send it to you. Benefits will never be gained only from the battlefield, and it will never be obtained from just one battlefield." Chen Chen only led the Dongfeng Corps to fight a brave battle, but after this battle, the whole situation suddenly opened up. Although everyone still had doubts about the strength and means of this team before they killed Nakam. After this battle, all local forces began to officially recognize this team, and their recognition actually contains goodwill to a large extent. Although the Dongfeng Corps fought fiercely and killed many people, they had a principle that they had never broken and would not break in the short term. That is, they would not rob passersby. This can be seen from the targets they targeted. Chuni means family. They were the first to do it. Nakong, a drug dealer. They were the first to arrest the Dongfeng Corps. They were friends of the Dongfeng Corps. The 4 great families of Kokong. The revenge for the murder of relatives must be taken. How accurate is it even? The entire Kokong was destroyed, and the Dongfeng Corps did not take any action against the weak Pengdiran. Lu Guoxi's family, who cut off relatively quickly and had a lower presence, also escaped successfully. So in general, in the eyes of most forces, the Dongfeng Corps is a team with a strong background, powerful combat capability, fierce actions, but very disciplined. This group of people don't mind taking advantage of others' misfortunes, and will even start fires on their own initiative, but the fire they set burns everyone fairly, without favoritism. The Dongfeng Corps can take advantage of the situation, and so can everyone else. This alone is enough to form the basis for all parties to live in harmony with mutual suspicion and mutual vigilance. Of course, unreserved trust is impossible. After all, everyone lives for themselves and seeks a way out for themselves. But if neither side showed hostility, why couldn't they just shake hands? There was no need to be suspicious of the Dongfeng Corps' achievements, because if they really wanted to make a fuss, everyone still had the ability to ensure mutual destruction. This was a simplified version of the balance of terror, and it was a very effective balance. The situation was completely stabilized, and the Dongfeng Corps finally had time to catch its breath. After hanging up the phone with He Banxiong, Chen Chen spent the whole afternoon lying in a daze by the swimming pool of the villa. He also needed some time to relax and think about more complicated plans for the future. However, his relaxation did not last long, as a call from the north interrupted him. The caller was naturally Xiaoyu. Kokong was finally in such a state. If Xiaoyu didn't call to ask, then all their efforts on Chen Chen's line would be in vain. Sunken. Has it returned to Mengka? When the call was connected, Xiaoyu asked straight to the point. "Here we are. We just arrived yesterday. The matter in Kokong is over. We will not go there again for some time. You can handle the rest of the work by yourselves." "No problem. What about Bai Suqing's body? How did you deal with it?" Xiaoyu obviously knew that Chen Chen would never let Bai Suqing go, so even though the intelligence was not yet in place, knowing that Chen Chen had returned to Mengka, she could naturally guess what would happen to Bai Suqing. "There is no body. Bai Suqing disappeared, and we didn't catch him. But that's fine. Have you solved the problem between you and Pengdiran?" "There's nothing wrong between him and me. We just took advantage of each other once." Xiaoyu's way of asking questions was quite artistic, but Chen Chen's answers were straightforward. His meaning was very clear. That is, the Dongfeng Corps had no interest in participating in this power struggle, nor did it intend to use the Prung family as a springboard to do anything. These words instantly put Xiaoyu on the other side at ease. Although it was said lightly, she could still hear an undisguised honesty in Chen Chen's tone. This kind of honesty doesn't mean anything, and sometimes it can even be meaningless. However, if Chen Chen's honesty was after he had destroyed Lao Fa Jia Trading Company, defeated the coup forces, completely changed the situation in Kokong, had close contact with the allied forces, and then decisively cut off ties with them, it would be enough to explain the problem. So, she said, "That's good. That's it. I'm gonna hang up now." What? What? Just hang up like that?" Chen Chen immediately jumped up from the recliner and asked in disbelief. "Yeah, what else is there to talk about? How about we talk about how you fought against Lao Fa Jia Trading Company? Or the mobile warfare of the mechanized infantry company? Or how you blew up the Frontier Defense Battalion headquarters with a Type 87 howitzer? How about we talk about where you found the teaching materials? Xiaoyu's tone was somewhat teasing. Chen Chen was silent for a few seconds. Then he spoke. You've just killed the conversation. Wait till you write an apology. Can you be a little more contractual? Where's my helicopter? What helicopter? Playing dumma? If you keep doing this, I'll really be dead. Xiaoyu on the other end of the phone chuckled and replied, don't be too happy. Why we need to talk about this on the phone? Wait a few days. Once we have sorted out our affairs and the approval process is complete, someone will contact you. However, I still have to remind you that although this incident seems to have had a relatively mild outcome, the aftermath is still huge. We have already noticed some not-so-good signs, but no one can say for sure whether these signs will continue to develop. In short, you still have to be careful. Use this window of opportunity to develop your mercenary group. This way, if there are any opportunities to make a fortune in the future, you'll be able to do it, right? That's right, sister. Give me some helicopters. Chen Chen said seriously. Can I give you a space travel? Sure. I really want to. But I don't want her head. Stop asking for it all the time. Forget it. Let's talk later. I'm hanging up first. Wait a moment. Chen Chen called Xiaoyu again, and this time, he really had something serious to ask. Ganmao, what I mean is, are there any new developments in Kachin? As soon as these words were spoken, the little fish on the opposite side immediately became alert. She restrained her previous relaxed tone and did not answer Chen Chen, but asked seriously, why do you ask that? Chen Chen hesitated for a moment, organized his words, and answered cryptically, when we were in Banglong, we had a brief contact with the Shadow Corps. The other party's movements are more unclear than I expected. I think the power of the Shadow Corps may be strengthened. We have a feud with them. If they really strengthen their forces, the Dongfeng Corps will probably be the first to suffer. So, I need to know to what extent they can be strengthened. This is not information you have a right to know. Xiaoyu's tone was calm. Once it came to real work, she would immediately become extremely professional. With this professional attitude, it was impossible for her to leak any information to Chen Chen that should not be leaked. You can just chat, do business, or even joke around. However, the bottom line must never be touched. But Chen Chen did not give up because he knew the rules better than Xiaoyu. So he continued, I don't want any information. I just wanted to make a request. If Ganmao has a plan to leave Kachin and fly to somewhere else, can we know in advance? The other end of the phone fell silent again. After a long time, Xiaoyu finally spoke. Tell me how you figured it out first. Someone from the Shadow Corps let it slip. Chen Chen put the blame on the Shadow Legion without hesitation. How much leakage? They revealed that their background might be enhanced, and at the same time, someone called Red Blood Cell said that this would happen soon. In addition, the Shadow Corps branch in Banglong has close ties with the Bangningswang Trading Company. Finally, Jingdong was surrounded, and the Shadow Corps' activities were restricted. I don't know why they were so confident. Combining these conditions, this is the only way I can judge. These words are all lies, but they are also all true. Completely logical, with no hint of anything supernatural. Xiaoyu accepted Chen Chen's explanation and said, very brilliant and accurate inference. You can take my seat. Ganmao, this person is likely to do what you want. Okay, let's stop here. If you have understood this much, then we must meet. The period from 2009 to 2011 was exactly when the United States was calling the most for its return to the Asia-Pacific strategy, which included a loosening of its policy toward Myanmar, the UN Secretary General's visit to Myanmar, the Asia-Pacific Affairs Group meeting in Naypyidaw, the release of Aung San Suu Kyi, and many other complex activities. However, Chen Chen actually doesn't care about these overly macro trends. What he really cares about is something that is truly related to him. That is the development of the Wenbang organization in Kachin. Or to put it bluntly, it is the CIA's infiltration in Kachin and northern Myanmar. This was something he did not want to get involved in, but there was absolutely no way he could avoid it, and after defeating the Lao Fa Jia Trading Company, he was actually forced into the game. Therefore, he must understand the enemy's latest movements and grasp the details of the changing situation. If the CIA intends to change their strategy in Kachin in advance, he must also be prepared in advance. The key to this change actually lies in whether Ganmao will contact the CIA. That's why Chen Chen told Xiaoyu to pay attention to Ganmao's flight schedule, because this thing can really explain a lot of things. Of course, all this information about Chen Chen actually came from the parallel world of his previous life. It might be accurate, but under the butterfly effect, it might not be completely accurate. Therefore, it is understandable that Xiaoyu wants to meet him. After all, there are some things that cannot be said on the phone and can only be discussed clearly in person. But in this case, wouldn't Xiaoyu have to return to northern Myanmar? This is indeed possible. After all, the injury has healed, and such a long time is enough to completely cut ties with the original identity. In addition, she is already experienced and irreplaceable in the affairs of northern Myanmar, so a second overseas assignment is possible. However, what identity will she use this time? Last time it was Thai Chinese. What about this time? Why Chinese? It seems unlikely. Chen Chen shook his head, dispelling the messy thoughts in his mind, then put down the phone and continued to enjoy his rare afternoon sunshine time. He felt like a plant. He had been covered with a thick protective film before, but now he had taken off his equipment and was wearing light clothes. Under the sun, even his skin had the illusion of breathing. What's even more exaggerated is that after traveling for several months in northern Myanmar, a place with plenty of sunshine, he has become a lot whiter than when he first crossed over. Not only him, but everyone in the Dongfeng Corps turned pale. There is no doubt that this is the result of wearing a mask all year round. With the security hired by Mu Gue and the double vigilance of the Dongfeng Corps members, Chen Chen did not have to worry too much about safety issues. After putting aside the trivial matters in his mind, he fell asleep quickly. When he woke up, it was not yet 6 o'clock, but he had already received another call from Xiaoyu. I'm in Xiamingla now. Come meet me in Daluo. What the hell? So fast. Chen Chen subconsciously glanced at his watch. It had only been more than 2 hours since they hung up their last call. That's slow enough. 2 hours is enough for you to wipe out the Bai family. You're so fast, so shouldn't I be faster too? Come on, Polytech office, a meeting with business representatives. Is that okay? After a slight hesitation, Chen Chen replied, No, if you want to talk, come to Munka. I can't go. Are you afraid that I'll eat you? Xiaoyu asked back with a little surprise. Safety is not guaranteed. No one dares to touch you in this place, but there are many who dare to touch me. It won't be a problem for you to come to Munka, but if I go to fight Luo, there might be big problems. After hearing his answer, Xiaoyu on the other end of the phone was silent for a moment, and then said decisively, Then you can wait in Munka. Give me a suitable identity. I will be there in about 2 or 3 hours. It's still the same old rule. You have to ensure my safety. If I lose a piece of skin and get a lump, you'll have something to explain. That don't scare me. If you say that, I have to kill all the mosquitoes in Munka for you. Come on, I'm going to cook. Chen Chen's tone became much more relaxed because he knew that Xiaoyu, or the people behind Xiaoyu, were willing to set the meeting place in Munka, which at least showed that he was still trusted. Of course, this trust will inevitably be accompanied by more follow-up measures. For example, after Chen Chen spent more than 2 hours cooking dinner, he discovered that not only Xiaoyu came, but also 2 salesmen. And, judging from the fact that they barely spoke a word, it was obvious that these 2 salesmen were not doing ordinary sales work. Maybe it's not the weapons that are being marketed, but the ammunition? Well, the kind that came out of the gun. But anyway, under Xiaoyu's influence, the 2 of them were quite friendly towards Chen Chen. After a simple handshake and a bunch of nonsense that both parties knew the truth about, they sat together and had a simple dinner. Afterwards, everyone left the living room, and the salesman turned on the electromagnetic shielding device he carried with him. Finally, the meeting between Chen Chen and Xiaoyu was on the right track. The 2 sat opposite each other. Chen Chen looked at Xiaoyu's face and found that she had gained some weight after not seeing her for a while. Compared to the thinness and paleness she showed the last time we met, her face began to show some signs of baby fat, making it difficult to tell her age at first glance. However, theoretically speaking, an intelligence officer who can reach her position must be at least 24 years old. Because personnel training has a fixed process, even if it is a bit radical, starting from the age of 16, after training at multiple levels in schools, institutions, and front lines, by the time they are able to be sent out to perform tasks independently, they must be over 22 years old. Xiaoyu can not only perform tasks independently, but also has considerable frontline decision-making power, which means that her actual combat time is at least 2 years. Around 24, 25? But looking at her appearance, she really doesn't look like she is 25 years old. Whether it is the dressing style, makeup, or original appearance, they all tend to be younger. She feels like a female college student who hasn't graduated yet, innocent yet a little silly. Even if you look directly into her eyes, you would see absolutely nothing unusual. But Chen Chen knew that this was just her disguise. She was really a mature lady pretending to be a lowly, which was too deceptive. Seeing Chen Chen's scrutinizing eyes scanning him from head to toe, Xiaoyu frowned in confusion and asked, What are you looking at? I want to see if the wound on your hand has healed. How is it? Does it affect your activities? Fine. Xiaoyu shook his head and continued, It's just a fracture. There's no neurological problem. The recovery should be quick. The injury to my lungs is quite troublesome. I am still recovering and cannot do strenuous exercise. So during my stay in Munka, you better not cause any trouble, or I won't be able to handle it. Your stereotype of me is too serious. Am I the kind of person who would cause trouble anytime and anywhere? Chen Chen spread his hands innocently, and a playful smile appeared on Xiaoyu's face. Oh, yes, it's all because of other people looking for you, right? That's true. Chen Chen answered seriously. Xiaoyu blinked and calmly passed over the topic. Let's talk business. Where would you like to start? Let's start with the helicopter. Chen Chen answered without hesitation. That I guess you would say this. You can't be too anxious about the helicopter. How can import and export trade be that simple? You did a good job this time. Basically, getting the helicopter is a foregone conclusion. Hearing this, Chen Chen finally breathed a sigh of relief. The helicopter I've been longing for is finally here. If after all this trouble I was finally given the answer of not in compliance with the rules, not approved, I would really give up. But before he could express his gratitude for the organization's concern, Xiaoyu continued. However, helicopter export is a very sensitive matter. Neither you nor any ethnic armed group in northern Myanmar is qualified to obtain helicopters from us. So if we want to get the helicopter, we have to design a pretty complete and reasonable process. This process requires the involvement of multiple parties. The current initial strategy is to conduct re-export trade through polytechnology through commercial companies in Laos or Vietnam. A lot of the things you want are impossible to get in this format. What you get is a cargo or firefighting helicopter that has been stripped of all its military equipment and made completely civilian. But we can guarantee that this helicopter must be a military-to-civilian conversion product. After saying the last sentence, Chen Chen felt relieved instantly. In fact, he didn't really want a military-armed helicopter with artillery and machine guns. That was nonsense. Not to mention that he was just a mercenary. Even if he unified northern Myanmar and became the largest warlord in northern Myanmar, the North would never export such things to him. However, if it is just a commercial helicopter, it is not cost-effective to order it from the North. The military-to-civilian helicopter is a rather ambiguous intermediate product. It may not have weapons, but it can retain weapon beams. It may not have fire control radar, but it can have an optoelectronic turret. It may look exactly the same as the civilian version of the Dolphin, but its true modification potential is absolutely incomparable. In other words, Big Brother does not intend to deliver everything all at once because that would be too reckless and unruly. But the thing is given to you. If you want to modify it later, can't you do it yourself? Noah Kong can modify a Skylark with a rocket launcher, so it's easy for you to modify AZ-9 Noah Dolphin. So Chen Chen nodded decisively and said, no problem, I can handle the rest myself. But the instruction manual that comes with the device cannot be in French. Don't worry, there won't be any problem with this. Xiaoyu nodded seriously, and then continued. Next, should we talk about Gon Mao's problem? Let's talk about the Shadow Core first. Chen Chen calmly lowered his voice and continued. First, I want to confirm whether the Shadow Core has any connection with the JFD. In other words, whether they have any connection with DevGru. DevGru is the U.S. Navy Special Warfare Research Group. In a sense, it is the superior administrative unit of JTF, or the Joint Task Force. Chen Chen had not originally thought of the Shadow Core's background in such a horrifying direction, but when that man shamelessly called him a red blood cell and said such biased words, he had to think about it carefully. After hearing his question, Xiaoyu's eyes changed slightly. You even understand this? Is there anything difficult to understand? Richard Marchand has been interviewed several times, and I heard that his autobiography is almost finished and is about to be published. Richard's Decoded Seals was published in 2011, which was indeed the time when he was most active, so Chen Chen's explanation is very tenable. Xiaoyu did not ask any more questions, but said directly, I no longer care where your information comes from. Anyway, judging from the current situation, our enemy should be eager to see you dead. Sometimes, this is also a kind of united front value. To be frank, according to the information we have, the Shadow Corps cannot have any direct connection with DevGru. They are the black gloves of MPRI, but not the black gloves of CIA, let alone the black gloves of JSOC or USACOM. So, the person you mentioned named himself Red Blood Cell, most likely just trying to flatter himself. But the fact that he could do such a thing is itself a hint. All in all, your judgment is quite accurate. Their background is getting stronger, but it's not that strong. These words gave Chen Chen a reassurance. It would be fine if the Shadow Corps had connections with the CIA, but if they were also connected with the Joint Special Operations Command or something like that, then it would be pure bullshit for me to want to kill them. Because that means that the US's actions in northern Myanmar are no longer infiltration, but have turned into combat. This sounds unrealistic, but it's just a mad dog who can tell. That won't be a big problem. What do you mean it's not a big problem? Xiaoyu asked with a frown. What I mean is that if they really do something out of line, I have a plan to take them out. Of course, there's no rush, but there will always be a chance. Are you planning to defeat the Shadow Army? Xiaoyu's tone was somewhat incredulous. After all, in her opinion, intelligence and operations work is a long-term and relatively slow-paced job. Even if you want to influence the situation in a place, you have to prepare and unfold it slowly, instead of being like Chen Chen, who would kill someone as soon as he came up. But Chen Chen's next few words were even more exaggerated. He said, it's useless to defeat the Shadow Legion. To truly resolve the CIA's deployment here, Kachin must change its world. That's a long-term goal, though. In the short term, we should first deal with the One Bang organization, fight the Shadow Corps, and grab the fruits of MPRI's operation here. We are mercenaries anyway. We can make a fortune by beating anyone. Why not fight something bigger? The little fish was stunned. After being stunned for several seconds, she finally said, no. If this is your plan, then why did you ask me to come over to talk? What else can we talk about? I want to see you, can I? Xiaoyu's expression froze. Chen Chen laughed and continued. Just kidding, I mainly want my helicopter. By the time Chen Chen said Kachin will be the next target, Xiaoyu's purpose of coming to Mungka had actually changed completely. She originally just wanted to talk to Chen Chen about the undercurrents of power changes in northern Myanmar, hoping that the other party would be prepared and provide certain support and convenience for the mission in the north and subsequent operations. But what she didn't expect was that Chen Chen had no interest in these overly complicated things at all. There are probably only two purposes for deceiving yourself. The first is to determine from their own words the upper limit of the Shadow Corps or the CIA's infiltration in northern Myanmar, and to determine whether Dongfeng has the ability to compete with them. The second is to finalize the helicopter issue. From the perspective of the Dongfeng Corps, Chen Chen did these two things perfectly, completely based on his own safety and the strategy of maximizing benefits. But she felt a little cheated towards Xiaoyu. So I'm just a tool? Although the two sides do have a cooperative and mutually beneficial relationship now, there is no need to be so direct, right? Especially after seeing that Chen Chen didn't even prepare a room for her. She was completely speechless. No, Mr. Rek, didn't you anticipate that we might need to stop overnight in Mungka? Chen Chen, who was temporarily tidying up the room for the three of them, smiled awkwardly and replied, I thought you were leaving after the conversation. Who knew you would stay overnight? You don't have any brains at this time? My current identity is the account manager of Mengla Urban Construction Group. Which account manager do you think would come to visit customers all night and then leave directly? Is this logical? Or are you planning to let us stay at the Vientiane Hotel? That's not the case. Chen Chen waved his hands quickly and continued. There are still a lot of rooms. They're just not cleaned up. It's impossible for those two brothers to really sleep, so just make do with them and take a rest. How long do you plan to stay in Mungka? 2 days. Xiaoyu answered briefly. What are the specific arrangements? Let me continue to talk to you about Kachin and the Shadow Corps. This issue covers a very large area and involves too many things. It is not comparable to the Kokong and Banglung issues you dealt with before. In terms of complexity, it is even more complicated than in Southern Shan State and Tachalike. I said the same thing. No matter what you mercenaries do, it has nothing to do with us. But at least you have to let us be prepared. Clear. Chen Chen nodded, patted the pillow on the bed and said, okay, You can sleep here tonight. How about it? Is there a sense of déjà vu? Doesn't that look familiar? These sheets are the ones I slept on the last time I came here. You didn't even wash them, right? Don't slander me. They've all been washed. Do you think there's no cleaning staff for such a big villa? Hearing Chen Chen's words, Xiaoyu walked forward, picked up the bed sheet, and sniffed it. There really was a smell of mites killed by the sun. It was still early and her work wasn't finished yet, so it was impossible for her to just sleep through the time. So, after thinking for a while, she said, "Can I go for a walk in Myanmar City?" "What is the purpose?" Chen Chen asked subconsciously. "I don't have any special purpose. I just want to see the changes here." After Chen Yimin's death, we haven't updated the situation here in a timely manner. This is a good opportunity to make up for it. Don't you have a dedicated informant? No, Myanmar is too small. If the 7th Brigade wasn't stationed there, it wouldn't have attracted much attention. Our focus in Shan State is mainly concentrated in Tachalike and Kingtung. This is not a secret. It is the same for everyone. Hearing her words, Chen Chen nodded slightly. Everyone is the same certainly does not include oneself, but refers to the big forces who want to gain benefits from this land. Myanmar, Thailand, the North, and the Americans are all the same. However, these forces would never have imagined that this unremarkable little town would suddenly become the eye of the storm in northern Myanmar because of the rise of a mercenary group. Its might is constantly sweeping across the entire northern Myanmar, but it itself is extremely calm, even peaceful. Perhaps this would be a kind of advanced experience? Xiaoyu looked at Chen Chen thoughtfully, waiting for his answer. Chen Chen hesitated for a few seconds before asking, "Will there be any problems with your discipline?" "Brother, I'm from the intelligence department." Xiaoyu couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Do I need to remind you of this? Have you ever seen an intelligence officer stay in his room all day long? I think you're quite strange sometimes. You're so familiar with our rules that you feel like one of our own, but you seem too old-fashioned." As soon as these words were spoken, it was Chen Chen's turn to roll his eyes. "What can I do? I'm not an intelligence officer. I was working behind you in my previous life, okay? The little I know about you is basically on paper, in pre-war briefings, or in a few limited face-to-face exchanges. How can I know how you really work? God knows what tricks you guys have up your sleeves. But come to think of it, I heard in my previous life that intelligence personnel stationed in a certain African country were keen on eating samsa at various roadside stalls and ended up giving themselves acute gastroenteritis. Of course, his hobby paid off. Just by looking at the price fluctuations of these street snacks, he guessed that the government was going to tighten its grain policy at the time and issued a grain hoarding warning to various local departments in advance. And sure enough, just 2 weeks later, local flour and brown bread prices began to rise, and a month later a temporary rationing system was implemented. Unprepared personnel in many countries were forced to evacuate, and only the uncles in the north were guarding the cold storage and eating and drinking to their heart's content. If you think about it this way, these people's work may not be as rigid or strict as you think. The deadline is not to reveal the identity and purpose, and the rest is basically free to play. Thinking of this, Chen Chen said, "Then let's go for a walk. Do you want to bring someone with you? Is it safe?" "It's definitely safe. It depends on whether you have any special requirements. Does it really matter whether Myanmar is in chaos or not? You have the final say on whether the ship is sunk." "Thank you so much. Do you want to go?" "Go. You take 2 people with you. I won't take anyone with me. It's more low-key this way." Xiaoyu answered decisively. So Chen Chen called Shi Dakai and Li Bang together, and the 4 of them set out along the road in front of the villa, heading towards the city center. The distance is not far, less than 2 kilometers. Xiaoyu said he was observing, but in fact his pace was quite fast, just like any other pedestrian in the city. And when they arrived at the central area and strolled around the fairly prosperous downtown, Xiaoyu's intelligence gathering work had been completed for the most part. Sitting outside the EI, the Intermio restaurant, where Jackal invited Chen Chen to dinner for the first time, drinking coffee, Xiaoyu said with some emotion, "This place is a little different from other towns in northern Myanmar. There are no ecstasy pills on the streets, no dead bodies outside hospitals, and even the prostitutes in the shady shops are in better spirits than those in other places. It seems that Bupa did do something after he came to power. It's mainly about drug control." Chen Chen nodded slightly and continued. "In fact, Myanmar's drug problem has not been completely solved, but there were 2 key battles that set the tone. In terms of formal compliance, Myanmar is still doing better than other places. One thing that is worth affirming is that Hobupa at least does not collect the tax on marijuana." "So radical? Then how does he make money?" Xiaoyu asked doubtfully. Her radical assessment is not an exaggeration at all. Which warlord in northern Myanmar does not sell drugs? Even if they do not sell drugs, they at least collect taxes and suck blood. Ibupa's move to sever the last connection in one go was truly radical and exaggerated. However, she didn't know, but Chen Chen knew very well how Ibupa made money, and he also understood how he managed to survive after cutting off the drug profit chain. Ibupa's main sources of income now are 2. First, minerals. Second, casinos. And third, arms. Needless to say, he took over a large number of Chen Yimin's industries, and almost all the mines near Wangsingping were taken into his pocket, which gave him a relatively stable cash flow. Secondly, he reorganized the casinos in the city and cooperated with the Wanfeng group to attract a large number of gamblers from Myanmar. It is said that he made a lot of money. Third, he also used Wanfeng group's products to sell arms. It's still deformed. It's like drinking poison to quench thirst. Xiaoyu made a judgment on the spot. True, but at least it's much better than the drug ecosystem, isn't it? You can't ask them to do it all at once, and I can't do that either. We're just a group of mercenaries. We only care about making money, no matter where the money comes from. Then I hope you grab more." Xiaoyu looked at Chen Chen with a half smile, but Chen Chen did not respond. Xiaoyu snorted and continued. "Where did Hobupa's munitions mainly go? Are there any signs that they are flowing to the north?" "Definitely not now. Are you so sure? Xiaoyu frowned and asked. Is there any basis for your judgment? We still need a basis for judgment? The trade route has not been fully opened yet, and the things he has are not enough for us. Before I want to deal with by Saoching, I couldn't buy a few mortar shells from him. The 40mm rounds, which are common on the street, are out of stock. In the end, it was the Wanfeng group that squeezed them out. I have to say that the supply chain situation is still very serious. Chen Chen stole a glance at Xiaoyu and met the other person's slightly smiling eyes. Are you hinting at something? No. I didn't hint at anything. I was just complaining. Okay, then I'll just pretend you didn't say anything. Oh, forget it. Just pretend I didn't say anything. Chen Chen had no choice but to shut up while Xiaoyu asked curiously. So how much did you buy to buy out all the arms? Chen Chen raised his head and thought for a moment, then replied, I bought about 3 million in 1 month. US dollars? Of course it's in US dollars. Then you are indeed this. Xiaoyu gave Chen Chen a thumbs up and said, destroying $3 million worth of arms in 1 month. How exaggerated is this? According to the basic equipment of the ethnic armed groups in northern Myanmar, this amount of money is equivalent to 10,000 Type 81 rifles with basic ammunition, which can at least arm a militia of 5,000 people with supplies and 1 month's salary. This was just the consumption of ammunition. Taking into account the loss and depreciation of other equipment, as well as the salaries of staff, the Dongfeng Corps spent nearly $6 million in one go. Others are fighting wars, but the Dongfeng Corps is just making money. Thinking about it this way, with this investment, it is not surprising that they defeated by Suaching. Chen Chen seemed to have known the number for a long time. He just said modestly, it's just average. The cost effectiveness is still okay. That's true. At least you haven't boarded the helicopter yet. Let's go for a walk. Xiaoyu stood up, and Chen Chen finished the last sip of coffee and followed her. Because of the sensitivity of her real identity and the fact that the temporary identity was not completely reliable, Xiaoyu did not wander around recklessly. Instead, she followed the predetermined script and wandered around the various construction sites in Mungka in a manner that matched the logic of her identity. This also gave her new insights. Most of the materials and equipment used on these construction sites come from the north. In theory, it shouldn't be possible because Myanmar has these things and it used to be easy to get here via the Tachalike Highway. It seems that the siege of Kangtung has begun to affect the situation in northern Myanmar. Now it's construction materials, and the next step will be daily necessities. The reliance on the north here will gradually increase, which is, well, good news for us. Sinking ship, your contribution is really more than what is apparent on the surface. That's good to know. Chen Chen pursed his lips and continued, Sister, give me a helicopter. Didn't I tell you to give it to you? More. With just a few of you, being able to afford 1 helicopter is already the limit. Do you really want to build an air assault brigade? Whether to build it or not is another matter. But the difference in the form of warfare between having an air force and not having one can be as great as a century. What's this about aerial warfare? Your ideas are dangerous and to the left. I also want the 3 armed forces to work together, but there are conditions for the problem. Chen Chen sighed and continued, it is impossible for me to expand my manpower on a large scale. Unless there is a breakthrough one day, my team can only be reduced to less than 100 people. In this situation, when we really face a large-scale head-on conflict, I have no advantage at all. The plate is expanding, and the territory is being established. What if one day I am forced to fight a positional war? At that time, I will no longer be able to outsource manpower through hiring, which means that I can only rely on firepower to make up for the lack of manpower. Isn't that easy to understand? So, I really want more helicopters. After hearing his words, Xiaoyu couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Of course she understood what Chen Chen really wanted to express. In fact, during today's walk, Chen Chen was laying the groundwork for this last paragraph. This seems a little deliberate and insidious, but not unpleasant. Because Xiaoyu knew very well that only by being cautious and careful with every step like him could he truly gain a foothold in this land and grow stronger. After all, what he asked for was just a reasonable one. It cannot be said that it can be achieved immediately, but there is indeed room for consideration. After all, if Hua State has it, why can't the Dongfeng Corps have it too? The Hua State appeared to be submissive on the surface, but they had done many dirty things secretly. And what about the Dongfeng Corps? This guy has never admitted that he has any intention of surrendering or that he is one of us. All he talks about is interests and exploitation. But he did defeat Nong Cam, Bang Long, and Bai Suaching. They even want to wipe out the Kachin. Well, for the money-grabbing stuff, they probably deserve something more than Hua State. Thinking of this, Xiaoyu made a secret decision in his heart. She raised her head, looked at Chen Chen and said, call me sister again, and I'll help you think of a solution. Chen Chen rolled his eyes and said, Annie, please. Jokes aside, the communication between Chen Chen and Xiaoyu certainly could not be based on their personal feelings. After all, it involved 2 complicated situations, 2 complicated interest relations, and many rules that could not be broken. Chen Chen didn't want to make things difficult for Xiaoyu, so he didn't respond to Xiaoyu's words at all. After interrupting the other party's train of thought in a joking way, he ended the topic directly. Ultimately, Xiaoyu is a messenger and a supervisor. However, if one rashly crosses a line without any knowledge, the result will be extremely troublesome for both parties. Not to mention substantive things, even some emotional tendencies are dangerous. Reason must be put first. At least reason must prevail over the friendship between the two. Otherwise, it will be a catastrophic disaster. Xiaoyu obviously knew this, so she didn't care about Chen Chen's non-cooperation. If it were any other girl, she would probably get mad and act like a spoiled brat because of this word Annie, but she just responded to Chen Chen with an uncle and didn't care anymore. The 2 of them were in front, and Li Bang and Shi Dakai were behind. The 4 of them walked all the way back to the villa, but before they got close, Chen Chen and Xiaoyu received the news at the same time. Chen Chen's news came from Bai Go, and Xiaoyu's news came from the two salesmen who stayed behind. The content of the messages was the same, which was that Bao Xiaomei had arrived. At this time, they were only a few hundred meters away from the villa. The two looked at each other, and Chen Chen spoke first. It was not arranged by me. Xiaoyu nodded and replied, I know it wasn't you who arranged it. You didn't have to do that at all. Don't worry, nothing will go wrong. Tell your two brothers to leave immediately after entering and don't speak. Chen Chen gave Dakai and Li Bang a look, and they nodded immediately. Clear. So, Chen Chen and Xiaoyu immediately got into the mood and started to compete with each other in acting in front of the other two. So, Mr. Chen, the results of our inspection this time are still relatively positive. The prices of building materials and engineering services in Mengka are rising, but our Mengla construction is still favorable. I suggest that we finalize the contract in the near future. You have to give us the blueprints first. Besides, our requirements for building quality are different from others. There was no rehearsal, not even the lines were checked. But the performance of the two can be described as absolutely natural and flawless, which even the dull Li Bang was astonished. He glanced at Dakai quietly and found that he also had an expression that he couldn't hold back. Sure enough, these two people are truly in sync with each other. Well, I just need to play the role of a passerby. Everything went according to plan. When they returned to the villa, Chen Chen and Xiaoyu were still discussing the strength and adaptability of cement of different grades. It was not until they saw Bao Xiaomei in the living room that Chen Chen stopped in surprise and asked, Ms. Bao, you are here so soon? White Dog didn't explain it to me clearly, so I thought you hadn't come yet, so I didn't rush back. You are. Looking at Chen Chen's expression, and then at Xiaoyu beside her, Bao Xiaomei was full of doubts, but it was not easy to ask directly, so she could only follow Chen Chen's words and said, I just arrived too, Mr. Chen. Are you out discussing business? Yes. I am planning to build my own residential area. This is Cunning, the account manager of Mengla Urban Construction Group. Chen Chen said a Burmese name that had nothing to do with Xiaoyu. This was something that had been prepared in this round of identity information. Cunning? The moon, what a nice name. Nice to meet you. Bao Xiaomei waved politely to Xiaoyu, who looked flattered and handed over his business card, then stepped back reluctantly. Chen Chen asked himself if he could fake this. My goodness, I can only play myself, but you, Xiaoyu, have a wide range of roles. But it is also the basic qualities of a special job. After a few simple greetings, Xiaoyu tactfully said goodbye, and Bao Xiaomei sat on the sofa naturally, just like one of us. Mr. Chen, why are you still standing? I won't be polite between us. Chen Chen laughed and sat down opposite her without hesitation. You're welcome, Miss Bao. Would you like some tea? No more drinking. I'm here for serious business, he said, and left. This time, Bao Xiaomei performed cleanly and efficiently. It's like this, Mr. Chen. Do you remember what I told you before? About the decentralized drug manufacturing factory? Remember, I definitely took Miss Bao's matter to heart, but I was so busy before that I really couldn't find the time to do it. I totally understand. A man must do great things. Bao Xiaomei smiled and continued. But I should make some time now, right? I think even if I have to wait in line, it's my turn. As soon as these words were spoken, even Li Bang, who was standing aside on guard, felt a pang in his heart. The Dongfeng core team? What you said is not auspicious. Chen Chen also had this thought in his mind, but he had a good psychological quality and remained calm on his face. Ms. Bao, you are being too harsh, Mingyang Reservoir, right? I remember it all. I'm resting and training these days. It will take at most 2 weeks. I will definitely take care of your business. That's great. Bao Xiaomei's smile grew wider. After receiving Chen Chen's confirmation, she really didn't seem to intend to stay any longer. Instead, she stood up leisurely and said, I came here just to ask Mr. Chen a word. Since there is no problem, I won't bother you anymore. By the way, has Mr. Chen's friend arranged a place to stay? If you don't mind, I can help arrange it. The alarm bell in Chen Chen's heart rang, and then he answered, No need to bother. There are a few rooms left. Let them stay here. We will have our own reception in the future. We can't arrange it somewhere else. This statement is very distant, but also very reasonable. Even Bao Xiaomei couldn't find any fault with it, so she had no choice but to say goodbye with a smile. After she left, Xiaoyu met Chen Chen in the command room to make sure that no one was watching her. Stay away from Bao Xiaomei. I can only tell you that the so-called cleaning mission she gave you has nothing to do with us. I know. Chen Chen nodded solemnly, then said, but I still have to complete the task. This is a necessary condition for other things. Are you really going to sweep away the Wen clan? Let's try it first. Wenbong's main base is drugs. We have nothing to do anyway, so let's give it a try. Understood. Xiaoyu didn't say anything more, but at this moment, the door of the command room was suddenly knocked. Then, after getting Chen Chen's permission, Bai Go walked in. His first sentence stunned Chen Chen. He said, We found the clues to the kidnapping case. Sang Yi went to deliver a letter, and he took a stroll while he was there. What a pleasant stroll. Chen Chen actually really wanted to solve the Huamei commercial bank kidnapping case. After all, this mission came with a reward of $5 million. In terms of cost performance, no task can compare to it. But there was no way. The Dongfeng Corps schedule was too tight, and the crisis it faced was too severe. Chen Chen simply had no time to deal with such small matters. Therefore, even though he had indeed locked onto some clues before, he only used this task as a cover and did not really put in even a little bit of effort. After the Bai family was destroyed and the crisis he faced was resolved, he really wanted to pick up this matter. However, what he didn't expect was that before he gave the order, Sang Yi actually took the initiative to start the investigation and achieve results. I have to say, this kid really wants to improve. Chen Chen secretly sighed twice in his heart, looked at the white dog at the door and asked, What's the specific situation? The white dog glanced at the little fish sitting next to him, and the latter immediately stood up and said goodbye. You guys chat. I won't listen or participate. Then go and rest first. Chen Chen naturally did not try to keep him. This was not because of any lack of trust between the two parties, but a simple rule. Cooperate when it is time to cooperate, and don't get too involved in things that are not related to cooperation. So, after Xiaoyu left, Bai Go sat opposite Chen Chen and answered. Sang Yi is a native of Mingyang. He is very familiar with Huamei Trading Company and has had some dealings with it before. Moreover, he was close to the two members who were on the mission, so he had more information about the specific details. Of course, these guys were not very smart, so they could not express everything when exchanging intelligence. So this led to some seemingly unimportant things being missed when we simply communicated before. For example, the USB drive we got said not yet sent out, but it should have been called not ready to send out because the Swallow was planning to make some edits on the USB drive. This time, when Sang Yi arrived at the old street, he suddenly remembered this incident, and then he thought that the hostage must have been dead, otherwise there would be no need to release a separate video. This is obviously not something that ordinary kidnappers would do. It must be due to a deep hatred or a life-and-death conflict of interest. So, he asked around about Huamei Commercial Bank and threw out some bait. In the end, he actually found out that someone knew that Su Yu's daughter was dead. This is very unusual. The news release now only said that his daughter was kidnapped, but there was no mention of the video. Moreover, this suspect actually had a direct conflict with Huamei Commercial Bank. On the whole, even if they are not the culprit, they are at least insiders. Understood. After hearing what Bai Go said, Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Is Sang Yi stupid? No, he is not stupid at all. Otherwise, it would be impossible to find a breakthrough in the kidnapping case in such a short time. The stupidity he displayed was probably just the slowness caused by the lack of professional intelligence training. This is the normal way of thinking for an ordinary person. After all, not everyone is a genius. And it is even more impossible for everyone to have the experience accumulated from previous lives like you do. Being able to react in time and use the information you have to make up for the omission is actually enough. Thinking of this, Chen Chen said, saying you did a great job this time. After the mission is over, you can give him some bonus. But right now, we have to focus on the mission itself. Tell me about the suspect you found. Bai Go nodded immediately, then took out a notebook on which he had written down some key information in crooked handwriting. Chen Chen glanced over and saw a few very conspicuous words. Bang Long, Jingyi Trading Company, Bang Ningzwang, robber business, kill the middleman. Putting these words together, Chen Chen could roughly understand what was going on even without listening to Bai Go's explanation. But the question is Bang Long? Bunnings? These two words appear again, and there seems to be some bigger story hidden behind them. At this time, Bai Go had already sorted out his thoughts. He said, this time, Sang Yi found a business called Jing in Banglong. Its headquarters is in Qingshui River, but their business is quite big. They also have branches in Laokai and Banglong. This company mainly deals in the relatively ordinary business of smuggling cars, and it is said that it also sells some arms. Their boss has a feud with Huamei Commercial Bank. Previously, Bang Ningzwang Commercial Bank placed a large order, and Jingyi Commercial Bank also wanted to take it, but Huamei Commercial Bank snatched it away. That order is worth less than $1 million, which is definitely not a small amount for an ordinary business. More importantly, the boss of Jingyi Trading Company originally wanted to talk to Huamei Trading Company, but their middleman was killed by Su Yu, and the reason is still unknown. In short, Jingyi Commercial Bank and Huamei Commercial Bank have a deep grudge against each other. When Huamei Commercial Bank got into trouble this time, they were applauding. But this is not the key point. The key point is that the boss of Jingyi Trading Company really believes that Su Yu's daughter is dead, and he is very sure of it. How did Mulberry Leaf get in touch with him? Chen Chen asked sharply. He found an excuse to discuss business. Huamei Commercial Bank also had smuggled cars. He mentioned it and had a few words with her. Is it credible? It's definitely credible. The boss of Jingyi Trading Company is called Zhao Jingyi. This name sounds elegant, but he is actually the gangster boss who ran over when the northern crackdown happened. He is a brainless person. He didn't realize how important what he said was, and he thought it was a relief. That's fine. Chen Chen nodded and continued. Get your equipment ready. Let's go to Qingshui River again and ask him. Whether there are dates or not, just hit them with a stick and catch them first. How strong is Jingyi Trading Company? I mean its armed strength. Well, it's better than nothing. There are more than 20 people and more than a dozen guns. The white dog scratched his head and said, this is not considered an armed force at all, right? In fact, Jingyi Trading Company mainly relies on the various forces in Kokong to survive and does not need to maintain much armed forces on its own. It was a charge and it was gone. It didn't even take a charge. I felt like we were standing there and they just shot it. But the question is, if you want to arrest them, there must be a reason, right? What's the reason? Chen Chen shook his head and said, the police need a reason to arrest someone, but we only need a list of names to arrest someone. Prong Diren is in charge of Kokong now. Even if he can't help us arrest people, can he still make things difficult for us? After determining the basic strategy, Chen Chen began to arrange an action plan without stopping the next morning. This operation actually does not require too many fancy strategies. It can be summarized in a few simple words. Hurry, arrest people, and interrogate. If the background of Jingyi Trading Company was really as simple as Bai Go said, he didn't believe that this person could withstand his interrogation. Not to mention the affairs of Huamei Commercial Bank. Even the things that happened before the crackdown can be told in great detail. However, the specific personnel and equipment to be arranged still need to be considered. The number of people should not be too large, as too many will attract unnecessary attention. The equipment must be saturated to ensure that there is sufficient combat effectiveness when the number of personnel is relatively small, and also to ensure that if subsequent actions are to be carried out directly, there is no need to waste time waiting for equipment. Similarly, I have to go because for this relatively professional operation, there is really no one else in the Dongfeng Corps who can replace me. The problem of talent gap must be solved as soon as possible. Standing in front of the villa door, Chen Chen sighed and pulled the bolt to check the status of 416 Hong Kong dollars. After long-term use, he has become extremely familiar with this gun and can perform various tactical movements with his eyes closed. But it was different for Shi Dakai, Li Bang, and others on the side. Although they would usually play with Chen Chen's gun, they had not received any systematic training and their movements were still relatively unfamiliar. Fortunately, this unfamiliarity does not affect their basic operations. Brother Chen, this red dot sight is really useful. Bao Qi excitedly raised his gun, aimed, and then put it down, his face filled with the satisfaction of getting what he wanted. All the HK-416S seized by Chen Chen and his team were equipped with red dot sights, the EOTech 552. This thing was first launched on the market around 2000. It is a relatively old sight, but it is relatively stable and reliable. Chen Chen himself doesn't like this scope very much. He thinks its field of view is too narrow and the visual angle inside the scope is green, which makes it unsuitable for the green environment everywhere in northern Myanmar. However, such a small defect cannot offset the suppression of the red dot sight on the traditional machine aiming. It is a good entry-level choice for people like Bao Qi who are just starting to get in touch with the non-direct aiming system. Pay attention to finding the right aiming distance. The interpupillary distance of the red dot sight is infinite. You don't have to aim deliberately according to the machine aiming method. The most important thing is to make yourself comfortable. Chen Chen opened his mouth and gave a warning. Clear. Bao Qi answered excitedly, then turned around and started tinkering with the new gun again. But compared to him, Shi Dakai is much calmer. Of course, he also liked the 416 Hong Kong dollars, but after playing with it for a while, he put it down carefully and said to Chen Chen, Captain, I won't bring the 416 Hong Kong dollars this time. I'll use the Type 81 instead. Bao Qi has a light machine gun, so the stability of his firepower is relatively guaranteed. Even if he is not used to the 416 Hong Kong dollars, he can still switch to a light machine gun. I can't do that. My sniper rifle is locked. If I don't have a suitable server, it might be troublesome. Let's wait until we have time to practice before we consider changing guns. No problem. Chen Chen answered decisively, and then said to everyone, this time we will most likely only be involved in a small-scale CQB operation, so the problem shouldn't be too big. Bao Qi is familiar with the 416 Hong Kong dollars and plays with it quite a lot, so he can bring a new gun. Li Bang, you should take the AA-12 and then a PKMS. Bao Qi brought PKMS and 416 Hong Kong dollars. Shi Dakai wears SVD and a Type 81. As for throwing objects, carry them according to the standard configuration. In addition, considering the urban environment, we need to bring listening stations and wall-penetrating detectors this time. At the same time, we also need to carry machine guns and rifles for Sang Yi and Shorty. The overall equipment is quite heavy, so we have to drive Peng Shuqing's Predator back first. White Dog, you do it. Clear. Baigo nodded immediately and took on his job as logistics quartermaster without any resistance. Looking at the Dongfeng Corps team ready to go, Xiaoyu, who was still staying in the villa and planning to perform the full trick, also sighed. You are also very good at ammunition and gun management. You have better guns, but you don't use them. Choose PKM and SVD. Hearing her words, Chen Chen shook his head calmly and then replied, there is no best weapon in this world, only the most suitable weapon. We originally came here with Soviet-made weapons, so our proficiency is much higher than that of the new equipment. This time we are going to play a high-intensity, fast-paced CQB game, so I will definitely use the old equipment as the main equipment. But in the future, we will definitely have to gradually replace them with more uniform equipment. Let's not talk about this anymore. What are your plans now? Chen Chen did not plan to delay too long. According to his communication with Sang Yi, the whereabouts of the owner of Jingyi Trading Company were unstable, and he might soon leave Qingshui River and sneak to the north to discuss business. Therefore, in order to achieve a quick victory, they prepared to set off this afternoon. But Xiaoyu's original plan was to stay another night, so there was a discrepancy in the schedules of both parties. Therefore, Chen Chen had to confirm Xiaoyu's arrangements, and if necessary, he planned to send Xiaoyu away now. But Xiaoyu didn't make it difficult for him. Instead, he said directly, just do what you should do. We will still follow the original plan. I'm not leaving right now today. That would be uncharacteristic. But you don't have to stay here with me. Appoint me an entourage, someone I know well and trust. Tomorrow afternoon, we will set out to return to Myanmar. Let the white dog follow you. Chen Chen pointed at the white dog waiting on the side, and the latter immediately walked up and stood straight in front of Xiaoyu. He didn't think there was anything wrong with being used as a bodyguard. After all, he knew Xiaoyu's face and knew Xiaoyu's identity. In his heart, Chen Chen's entrusting him with such an important task was not a sign of contempt, but a sign of reuse. So he said, Captain, don't worry, I will definitely complete the mission. When I'm here, Manager Cunning is here. When I'm not here, she's still here. It's not that exaggerated. Xiaoyu couldn't help laughing and then comforted him. It won't be dangerous, and I won't run around. I just need a contact. Okay, hurry up and prepare. I should also go and plan your residential area. Having said that, Xiaoyu waved to Chen Chen and turned away without any reluctance. But after taking a few steps, she suddenly turned back and said to Chen Chen with a frown, remember to put on the neck guard of your bulletproof vest. The Dongfeng Corps has traveled the 200-kilometer straight-line distance from Mungka to Kokong many times. As they were familiar with the route, This time it only took them 6 hours to reach the outskirts of Qingshui River. Unlike the old street, this place is actually just a small town. The guards are not strict and there are almost no checkpoints. Until their plunderers met up with Sanji at the Xinguo warehouse on the outskirts and settled down, they were not subject to any inspection. At this time, it was 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were still 5 kilometers away from the main urban area of Qingshui River. If they attacked quickly, it would take less than 20 minutes for them to complete the whole process of breaking in, arresting people, and evacuating. But before that, Chen Chen must get all the information about Jingyi Trading Company. So, in the Xinguo warehouse, several people held a brief pre-war meeting. Sang Yi was the speaker at the briefing. He was a little nervous, but his logic was still quite smooth. Jingyi Commercial Bank is located on the west side of Qingshui City, parallel to Fulai Hotel. It is a triangular courtyard structure, similar to the Banglong Laofa Commercial Bank we attacked before. However, the building structure of Jingyi Commercial Bank is not solid because they mainly deal in the business of smuggling used cars. 2 of the 3 buildings are vehicle showrooms built with ordinary colored steel, located in the west and north directions respectively. The easternmost building is a reinforced concrete office building, which is also Zhao Jingyi's residence. There are nearly 40 employees in the entire business, of which about 20 are ordinary employees who will leave after get off work. Among the other 20 people, about 5 or 6 are logistics staff, nannies and other staff who live with Zhao Jingyi all year round. The rest are basically security guards. The equipment of these security guards is not very strong. They are basically Type 81 and Type 81 rifles, but I also saw a small number of submachine guns. Among the dozen or so people, there are probably 5 or 6 wearing light bulletproof vests. Overall, they are still very fragile. If we want to conduct an assault, we can enter directly from the main entrance on the south side, use smoke bombs to block the enemy's sight, and directly launch an assault on the concrete house. The security inside the residence is very weak. Usually there are only 2 or 3 security guards standing at the door. It will not affect the speed of our assault. After entering, we can rely on the concrete bunker to suppress the enemy, and then evacuate directly through the back door of the house and bypass the Fulai Hotel. Our vehicles can wait at the construction site near the Fulai Hotel. I've checked it out, and the location there is very suitable and concealed, and it will basically not attract attention. After listening to Sang Ye's briefing, Chen Chen nodded approvingly. It has to be said that during this period, Sang Ye's self-training was quite effective, not only in physical fitness but also in combat theory. There has been a considerable improvement. Although the scenario of Jingyi Trading Company is only the simplest one in CQB, Sang Yi was able to plan a complete combat plan based on the intelligence obtained from a single contact. To some extent, he has already possessed combat qualities that surpass those of elite mercenaries and reach the level of an ordinary northerner. Very good plan, basically no omissions. Chen Chen praised generously and then continued to ask, "How's that Shorty side?" A look of joy appeared on Sang Ye's face, and he immediately replied, "Shorty is still watching over there. He has booked a room at the Fulai Hotel, which is just right for him to have a full view of Jingyi Commercial Bank." The location of Jingyi Commercial Bank is very bad. Chen Chen couldn't help but frown. It's very bad. Zhao Jingyi is fundamentally different from the drug dealers we fought before. He thinks what he does is a legitimate business and is protected by the Kokong authorities, so he basically doesn't consider too many security issues. This business is so big that even if we just pick a group of people from the Allied forces, we can easily defeat it. Overall, it's a pretty simple job, Captain. Should we set out now and take it down right away? Chen Chen thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, "It's still too early now. Let's wait until late at night if possible. After all, this is a war. Any accident may cause us unnecessary losses. Since Zhao Jingyi won't be leaving today, it doesn't matter if we delay a little. So, we will hike to Qingshui River first, and then hide in the jungle on the north side and wait. If the situation does not change, at 11:45, the raiders will start heading for Jingyi Trading Company. We will launch the attack at 11:50 and evacuate around 11:55, heading to Hobin along the Qingshui River and Gunong Highway. We will complete the interrogation there and determine the next plan." "Clear," Sang Yi answered immediately, without any question in his tone. At this time, he had a strong feeling that he still had too much to learn. Although his team leader first affirmed his plan, he only used a few words to complete the missing entry and exit parts of his plan. Thinking back, these 2 parts are exactly the most important. After all, what's so great about attacking Jingyi Trading Company? With comprehensive equipment suppression, you can take it down even if you walk in casually. Isn't the most important thing how to approach stealthily and then evacuate quickly? But thinking of this, he suddenly had another question. Why don't we just drive over there and wait? I mean, we could get a civilian car, so it wouldn't be too conspicuous. Chen Chen shook his head and explained. If it's an isolated target, driving over there is definitely the best option. But Jingyi Trading Company is related to Bangningswang Trading Company. I always feel that it is not right. What if someone is following us? What if their background is not as simple as it seems? Although it may be an illusion, it won't go wrong to be cautious. Let's use the safest method to infiltrate. Understood. Sang Yi nodded in agreement, thinking to himself. Why else would the difference between professionals and amateurs be so great? If I were to lead the action, I might be able to achieve good results, but it would definitely not be a full score. The plan had been drawn up, and everyone started to act immediately. Chen Chen arranged for Bao Qi to stay behind as the driver, while 4 people including Sang Yi went north, bypassing the warehouse and heading east along a small road away from the main road. The road was not easy to travel on. Although Chen Chen was familiar with the roads and rivers in various locations in northern Myanmar and had looked at the satellite map in advance, it was absolutely impossible for him to know all the roads by heart. So basically, the team still relied on GPS and compass to determine the general direction and grope forward. There was no other way around it. Each of them was wearing a bulletproof vest, and if they walked on the main road, they would be too conspicuous. It took 2 hours for the 4 of them to finally reach the vicinity of the main urban area of Qingshui River. At this point, they could determine the approximate location based on the lights in the city. Chen Chen contacted the stalking dwarf through the radio, and with his guidance, he found the location of Jingyi Trading Company and found a hidden observation position in the jungle on the north side, less than 300 meters away from the trading company. Just below them to the south is their target this time. The situation was exactly as Sang Yi had described, a triangular courtyard with 2 colored steel buildings and 1 concrete one. With the help of the FLIR Recon 3 thermal imaging telescope, the positions of all exposed enemies are clearly visible. 6 active targets. There should be more in the building. Chen Chen said in a low voice. I saw 2 in the building, in the north room. There should be 1 in the west room as well. The air conditioner outdoor unit was running. There is someone in the east room. The guard at the door just had a conversation with the person inside. The observation and search for the enemy method that Chen Chen had taught before came into play again. Based on the details revealed by the enemy, the 4 members of the team quickly locked onto the enemy's approximate position. The positions of 11 enemies are marked. After the battle begins, these people will be cleared and suppressed as soon as possible. Time passed by minute. Night fell, the enemy became more and more relaxed, and a few security guards even started hot-pot in the yard, leisurely as hell, unaware that they had been targeted by a hungry wolf that would select its prey. It was not really a difficult task, as long as nothing unexpected happened. Chen Chen thought secretly in his heart. However, the reason why Murphy's Law is well known to the world is because the probability of this thing happening is really high. At 11:30 in the evening, just 10 minutes before Chen Chen's scheduled action time, an accident happened. Alexis drove slowly from east to west and stopped on the roadside about 100 meters away from Jingyi Trading Company. Except for Sang Yi, everyone became alert instantly. There's a problem. Watch out, Lexus. Shorty, can you see that, Lexus? Report the situation. Li Bang, Shidakai, and Chen Chen took turns speaking, and Sang Yi was completely confused. What's going on? Isn't it just a car? However, he didn't know that the appearance of this car here was 100 times inappropriate. There was no commercial facility near Jingyi Trading Company that could accommodate the car, and after parking, the people in the car did not get out. Even the car windows are covered with anti-peep privacy film. In northern Myanmar, doesn't this make sense? Chen Chen moved the recon telescope and increased the magnification, trying to see the situation inside the car through the windshield. At the same time, a reply came from the short-legged man. I'm in the hallway and can see into the car. There are people inside with guns. Grasp. What you fear will come true. Before the operation began, Chen Chen was worried that some unknown force would intervene. That would not only make the operation difficult, but also make the matter itself more complicated. He hoped very much that this was just a simple task of picking up money, but unfortunately, it was really not easy to earn such money. Everyone moved closer to the target and wait at a distance of 100 meters. Shorty continued to observe the other party's movements and report in real time. Receive. The short man answered immediately, and the 4 people on Chen Chen's side all took action. They quickly reunited and then moved quickly through the jungle. It took less than 2 minutes for everyone to reach the designated target point. However, the information transmitted from the short-legged man has also changed. Someone got off the bus. 6 people, all armed with guns, wearing bulletproof vests, heavy-duty ones. The car is approaching, and they are hiding behind it. Upon hearing the news, Chen Chen's heart skipped a beat. It's not because all 6 people were wearing bulletproof vests, but because they used a human vehicle coordinated covert movement tactic. If nothing goes wrong, after approaching the target location, they will definitely throw smoke bombs towards the gate, and then the personnel will quickly deploy and launch an attack. This thought flashed through Chen Chen's mind, and the next second, he heard the voice of the dwarf in the headphones. They're throwing smoke bombs. A fight is about to begin. Damn it. I finally ran into a professional. Chen Chen's face darkened, and he immediately adjusted his battle plan. Number 3. Occupy the advantageous position and block the entrance to the residence. Don't let these people get in. Number 1. Sang Yi, follow me and move forward into the range where projectiles can be used. Number 1. Don't use the smoke bombs. They must have thermal imaging. Listen to my command. Throw 2 thermite grenades at the entrance of the villa and in the middle of the yard to disrupt their vision. Number 2. Drive over here and be ready to pick us up. Clear. In a flash, the situation took a turn for the worse. Chen Chen led the team to advance quickly to a distance of about 30 meters. Although their vision was obstructed, based on the short man's continuous reports, they had already understood the situation inside Jingyi Trading Company. This team that came from nowhere did not adopt the entry route that Chen Chen and his team had previously preset. Instead, they slowly deployed their formation and were slaughtering all active targets. The security guards who appeared in front of them had no ability to fight at all. Someone shot at them, but it only took 1 or 2 seconds before they were knocked down by the quickly turned gunfire. This is a completely one-sided crushing, not only in terms of tactics and equipment, but also in terms of individual strength, which is definitely the top of the entire northern Myanmar. Listening to the report of the short-legged man, Chen Chen even felt like he saw the shadow of the Dongfeng Corps. No, it's not the shadow of the Dongfeng Corps. In a sense, they are stronger than the Dongfeng Corps because they have no shortcomings in their individual strength. The shooting is extremely accurate, and the harvesting is extremely efficient. From 300 meters to 30 meters, the Dongfeng Corps started almost at the same time as them, but when Li banged through the first thermite bomb, the enemy had already cleared the entire perimeter and was ready to attack the last residence. Less than 2 minutes. If the Dongfeng Corps had been a few seconds slower, they would have been able to successfully enter the villa and completely end the battle. But fortunately, Chen Chen's decision-making speed was just a few seconds faster than theirs. Bang! There was a distant gunshot behind him, and Shurdakai's SVD opened fire. Hit but didn't fall, Shurdakai shouted. Chen Chen took action immediately and threw out the M67 defensive grenade he had prepared long ago, followed by the second and third. In 5 seconds, all the grenades on Chen Chen's body were cleared, and he flew over the roof of the prefabricated steel house and fell in the middle of the yard. Under the action of the delayed fuse, 3 grenades exploded just in the enemy's route. Within a range of 15 meters, the fragments swept across and finally knocked down the first enemy. However, the location of the Dongfeng Corps has also been exposed. All gun muzzles were instantly pointed in the direction of the prefabricated steel house, and they opened fire almost without hesitation. No one could see the enemy's exact position, and the two sides began shooting at each other through the thin iron sheet. Bullets were flying, and the two professional teams had not yet officially met, but the high-temperature bullets had already spoken the first words for them. A life-and-death struggle. Chen Chen sometimes gets annoyed by his own caution because it makes simple things complicated. But most of the time, he would be extremely grateful for his own caution because it was this caution that saved his life at the critical moment. After sensing the appearance of other enemies, the mysterious team quickly made tactical adjustments. The 5 members who were still able to fight separately looked for cover and kept firing, completely suppressing the entire prefabricated steel house and completely blocking the attack direction of the Dongfeng Corps. At the same time, the last enemy left in the Lexus had also gotten off the car. He continued to circle eastward, seemingly intending to launch a sneak attack on the 3 people from the Dongfeng Court. If there was no external observation group, Chen Chen would have been doomed to die after this wave of operations. Fortunately, Shorty discovered his movements in time and reported it quickly, giving the Dongfeng Corps time to react. Shurdakai, who occupied the commanding heights, immediately turned his gun around and suppressed the opponent's actions with SVD. However, at a distance of more than 100 meters or nearly 200 meters, it is extremely difficult to accurately hit an enemy's head. With the advantage of the sight, Shurdakai hit the opponent twice, but the opponent just swayed a few times and quickly got out of Shurdakai's shooting range. He even used the Lexus as a cover to suppress Shurdakai with firepower, and his shooting was so accurate that Shurdakai couldn't even raise his head. The situation was very bad, both for the Dongfeng Corps and for this mysterious team. The observers on both sides restrained each other, while the assault team was in a stalemate across the prefabricated steel house. The sound of gunfire continued, and neither side dared to make any unnecessary moves in this fragile balance. It was like 2 teams playing tug-of-war. If they relaxed even a little, they would lose everything. Both Chen Chen and the other team leader were thinking the same thing. They were all betting on which side would have the unlucky guy hit by the bullet. As long as such a person appears and the balance of firepower is broken, a breakthrough will be opened naturally. But the same thing still applies. The more saturated the equipment is, the higher the fault tolerance rate is. Chen Chen's caution once again brought him a slight advantage that was as light as straw. He had 2 PKMs in his hands, 1 branch of Li Bang and 1 branch of Sangyi. The 200-round ammunition box gave the Dongfeng Corps a slight lead in firepower sustainability. As the stalemate continued, this slight lead gradually accumulated and finally reached a level that Chen Chen could perceive. He could feel that there were small, intermittent breakpoints in the opponent's firepower, and he seized this breaking point. Number 3. Throw a smoke bomb to divert the enemy and help me suppress the enemy driver. I'm going to take him down. Clear. Shurdakai moved extremely quickly. A few seconds later, the sound of gunfire from the Type 81 rifle rang out. Shurdakai switched to an automatic rifle and began to provide covering fire. Chen Chen also took action immediately. He no longer cared about the 2 people who were shooting at the enemy, but quickly stood up, risking being hit by bullets, and threw a stun grenade into the yard, then immediately ran south around the prefabricated steel house. Stun grenades cannot make the enemy lose their combat effectiveness. With the help of noise-canceling headphones and effective training, the elite special forces can even enter the door despite stun grenades. This move is just to buy myself a few seconds. Chen Chen rushed through the distance of dozens of meters. When he appeared on the road south of Jingyi Trading Company, the driver in heavy armor was firing back at the mountain with his gun. When he saw the gun in the other person's hand, Chen Chen was even confused for a moment. 17 Malawian kwaches, or maybe it should be called Scarage, which is a more common name. This gun only began small-scale production in 2007 and was first issued to Special Forces in 2009. In December 2009, due to the Sakam procurement case, a small-scale, fully automatic version was leaked to the public. It is possible to appear on the battlefield. However, it should not appear in northern Myanmar and in front of me. Without time to think, Chen Chen raised his gun and aimed almost instinctively. The gun was tilted and the iron sight on the side coincided with the enemy's head. Then the next second, the trigger was slightly paused and the bullet flew out of the chamber. There was no fancy gunfight. After Shurdakai helped him hold the gun line, the enemy was nearly 2 seconds behind Chen Chen. When he noticed Chen Chen approaching from the side and was about to turn his gun around, Chen Chen's bullet had already hit him between the eyebrows. Finally, the first direct kill occurred. Chen Chen continued to move forward quickly, and at this time, Shurdake's voice came from the headphones. I was shot once. I'm okay, but the bullet was heavy. The guns they used were not ordinary ones. It's a new gun. Chen Chen answered briefly, then immediately rushed to Lexus, ready to add suppressive fire from the side. He quickly fired again and checked the situation inside the car. But just as he was about to show his head to shoot, fierce and accurate firepower had already come from the yard of Jingyi Trading Company. These are 2 guns. He had previously seized the lead brought by the continuous firepower of the PKMS. And after he left, the enemy also seized the opportunity that Li Bang had run out of bullets and had to reload under the cover of a single person's firepower. The enemy's decision-making speed was so fast that even Chen Chen was amazed. His assault had created a great opportunity, but the enemy took advantage of the slightly fluctuating balance and forced two people to recomplete the suppression of his new direction. There is no doubt that this is a really strong enemy. If we continue fighting, we will really have no advantage and may even be dragged to death by them, because their individual abilities and teamwork were better than their own, and their ammunition management was perfect. Chen Chen hid behind the wheel of the Lexus, with ricochets flying around him. The bullets were not very dense, but they blocked all his angles of probing. Number 2. Where the hell have you been? Chen Chen shouted loudly. At this time, more than 5 minutes had passed since Chen Chen issued the order. No matter what, Bao Qi should be here soon. If it doesn't come soon, the 4 of us really won't be able to hold on any longer. The balance has begun to tilt. Our 2 firepower points have been suppressed, and the enemy has also found an opportunity to use projectiles. The 2 grenades flew over the prefabricated steel house and landed dangerously about 10 meters behind Li Bang and Sang Yi. You used too much strength, but the next shot will definitely be accurate. Chen Chen heard Li Bang shouting in his earphones. He gritted his teeth and decided to take a risk. But at this moment, Bao Qi's voice came. I have arrived. Immediately afterwards, the plunderer whizzed past Chen Chen's eyes and blocked the door of Jingyi Trading Company. The plunderer paused, falling into an eerie and somewhat ridiculous silence. This silence lasted for a few seconds, and when everyone was confused, the M2 on the weapon station suddenly opened fire. Bang, 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 the high-caliber bullets shredded everything in front of the looters. All the bunkers were a joke. Balance, game, and penny pinching no longer exist. In just 10 seconds, the team that was held back by the 4 Dongfeng soldiers all turned into corpses, or rather, into body parts. After the arrival of the predators, the whole battle cannot be said to be one-sided, but it should be said to have come to an abrupt end. In the face of close-range heavy firepower, any tactics and techniques have lost their meaning. The mysterious team that did not have time to evacuate were blocked in the yard, and then became the victims of Bao Qi's gun at an astonishing speed. Chen Chen had no time to collect the spoils. Instead, he quickly rushed into the yard and, under the cover of Bao Qi, began to check all the corpses and tear off the masks on their faces. What really surprised him was that all the members of this team were white. It's all over now. An uncontrollable thought flashed through Chen Chen's mind. Damn it, I won't kill the CISAD CIA Special Operations Division people? If this is true, then it would be a serious matter. Chen Chen knew that at this point in time in 2010, there was a legend about SEALs circulating on the internet. It said that in 2003, the United States and Myanmar organized a major operation, clashed with the Myanmar side, and lost an entire team. This legend couldn't be true, of course, because 2003 was the time when the US sanctions against Myanmar were the most severe. How could the SEALs appear in Myanmar at this time? But now, I might really become the protagonist of the legend. Looking at the scars and HK-416s with optical sights on the ground, looking at the standard dragon scale armor they were wearing, and then looking at their faces that were completely pale like A4 paper, Chen Chen really felt confused. These certainly couldn't be real SEALs, but they were most likely SAD seconded from the SEALs to participate in special paramilitary operations. It was no exaggeration to say that the moment Chen Chen saw these people's faces, his hair exploded in his helmet. He didn't expect that he just wanted to arrest someone for questioning. How could he get into such a big trouble? What did Zhao Jingyi do? Or, what on earth was Huamei Commercial Bank involved in? Without time to think, Chen Chen quickly arranged the follow-up arrest. Fortunately, the intense gunfire before made Zhao Jingyi dare not act rashly. When Chen Chen and his team found him, he was hiding in the room shivering and even thought that the Dongfeng Corps was here to rescue him. This saved Chen a lot of trouble. He coaxed and deceived Zhao Jingyi out of the room. When Zhao Jingyi looked at the white corpses on the ground, he immediately turned to the Dongfeng Corps without any bottom line. Extremely cooperative and obedient, without any hesitation or resistance. They got on the Marauder and took the short-legged truck that came over, and the group ran all the way, fleeing quickly along the Qingshui River Ganong Highway. This is really not an exaggeration at all, because Chen Chen knows that if the people he killed were really SAD members, then large-scale retaliation would come soon. But what he couldn't understand was how could SAD appear here, and how could it target a small Jingyi trading company? Don't they have anyone under their command? Wasn't 2010 the starting point for them to restart the IMET, International Military Training Program? Logically speaking, with the Myanmar military government on the verge of stepping down, the CIA should have already found a good person. Even if they don't have any available personnel, don't the remnants of the 101 in Lavi and Kachin still have a lot of US loyalists? Can't they do this kind of work? Even if all these options are not available, they can still mobilize the Shadow Army through MPRI. They should not take any action personally. Thinking of this, Chen Chen's heart finally settled down. It shouldn't be SAD, right? If it was SAD, given their combat qualities, it would be impossible for them to not set up any fire observation posts when carrying out such a capture mission, but only use a driver to take on the fire observation duties. This kind of behavior is more like that of some arrogant mercenaries. He let out a long breath, and the sense of crisis that had just been like a mountain pressing down on him dissipated a little. The most urgent task is to figure out what the current situation is. So he turned to Zhao Jingyi, who was still shaking, and asked, "Do you know who wants to kill you? Think about it carefully, don't fool me. Look at those people who died at your doorstep, and the equipment they were wearing. This is definitely not something you can handle. Confess, and I'll give you some leniency, understand? You're just a second-hand dealer dealing in smuggled cars. Don't joke with your life." Hearing his words, a hint of surprise flashed across Zhao Jingyi's frightened face, but soon, this surprise turned into some kind of special surprise. He burst into tears and said, "Government, I confess. I confess. I really didn't do anything bad. I just dealt in smuggled cars. Just sentence me. I didn't do anything. I didn't expect them to be so cruel. My people are dead. They were my brothers. Nothing happened to them. They shouldn't have died. I really do. Don't give me that crap." Chen Chen slapped Zhao Jingyi on the face, and then continued to ask, "Who are they? What did you do?" Zhao Jingyi was a little dazed by the powerful slap, but he soon realized the seriousness of the problem, so he stopped talking nonsense and said directly, "They are from Bongning village. They are Ga Yaozi. They approached me before and asked me to trick Su Yu's daughter here. I helped them to do it, but I didn't expect them to be so cruel and kill her directly. I really didn't think it was that serious. I thought it was over. I thought they were just trying to steal my business. Who knew they would kill me too? GF, I'm really confessing. I don't know anything else except this. I don't even know why they kidnapped Su Yu's daughter." Bunning sang, Ga Yaozi. Chen Chen had already anticipated this. In fact, he had already felt the seriousness of the matter when Huamei Trading Company and Jingyi Trading Company were mixed up because of Bongning Manor's business, and that was why he had made adequate preparations. Now it seems that my trembling behavior really saved my life. "Who did you contact in Bangning's Wang? Give me a name." "I only know that the person who contacted me was called Sinai. He was the one who introduced me to the previous business, but he is dead now. He was killed in a bombing in Bongning village a few days ago. I thought it was Su Yu's revenge. I thought it was a good thing for them to fight each other. I really didn't expect it." "What was that business order before?" Chen Chen spoke again. "A smuggled car. It's just a smuggled car. There's really nothing else." "Then why did Su Yu want to kill your middleman? Who was the middleman? Is he related to Sonai?" "It doesn't matter. That man was just a broker I found. He has nothing to do with anyone else. His death was just bad luck. He must have said something wrong. Su Yu is like this. He is extremely evil, but I am just a small character." Shut up," Chen Chen said coldly, his eyes moving away from Zhao Jingyi. There is no doubt that this person is a real bit player. He didn't know why he was chosen by the people in Bongning village and participated in Bongning village's revenge against Huamei Trading Company. After the revenge was over and Bongning village happened to be taken down by themselves, the Ga Yaozi side may have realized that there was a possibility of exposure of this matter, so they immediately planned to erase all traces at all costs. That makes sense. After all, when he attacked Bangning's Wang, he had already anticipated that the problem might escalate. But no matter what, I would never have thought that the problem would expand in this direction. Chen Chen took a deep breath and quickly went over the current situation in his mind. The logic is clear and the events on the surface are connected. However, there are still several unresolved issues. First, Bangning's Wang and Huamei Commercial Bank originally had a cooperative relationship. So why did it suddenly turn into a confrontation? Second, there is no conflict of interest between Bunnings and Huamei Commercial Bank. Why did they have to take action against Su Yu's daughter? What is the purpose of such kidnapping? Third, how much is the connection between Ga Yaozi and this matter, or is this really just a commercial competition behavior of Bunnings? Fourth, and most importantly, where did this group of elite troops come from? Looking at the weapons that had just been seized under his feet, Chen Chen couldn't help but fall in a deep thought. After a long while, he suddenly turned to Zhao Jingyi and asked, "How do you know Su Yu's daughter is dead?" "That Yanzi. I was the one who found Yanzi. I saw the video they shot. I didn't actually say she was dead. I just said I thought she was dead. I say this to everyone. I said I wish she was dead. I didn't say I knew she was dead, but you show that you know." Chen Chen spoke coldly, cursing him as an idiot in his heart. I have to say that this Zhao Jingyi really fits his stereotype of some second-rate gang bosses in the north. Arrogant, conceited, self-righteous, and outspoken. He brags everywhere, makes threats everywhere, and thinks he is really some big shot. It's okay for you to do some low-class things normally, but you actually dare to talk nonsense when it comes to kidnapping? It is very likely that the reason he ended up like this was not simply because he participated in the incident, but because he showed knowledge of it. Damn it, you really can't save him. However, we can't kill him now. The situation is becoming increasingly unclear. It is better to keep a living person who knows the situation than a corpse that cannot speak. So, Chen Chen gave Li Bang a look, and the latter did not hesitate and knocked Zhao Jingyi unconscious with the butt of his gun from behind. It must be said that Li Bang was already very skilled at this job, as if he had practiced it specially. The plunderer was still running wildly, and the situation was urgent. Bao Qi once again drove this heavy armored vehicle at a high speed of 80 kilometers. After arriving at Gunong, the car turned and bypassed the main urban area of Gunong, crossed the Nujiang River along the small road, and drove along the side of Banglong to the vicinity of Hukou again, hiding in the temporary camp used last time. At this time, Chen Chen finally had some time to breathe, and using this time, Chen Chen made a phone call that he thought was crucial. Without a doubt, it was aimed at the small fish. He had no choice but to ask the other party for help, because the development of the matter was beyond the scope that the Dongfeng Corps could easily control. This is not about giving in, this is about assessing the situation and fighting for survival. The satellite phone signal was not very good, and it took Chen Chen nearly 2 minutes to search for the satellite. When he finally heard Xiao Yu's voice on the other end of the phone, his hands had already begun to sweat. "Hello? Shipwreck. It's me." Chen Chen paused for a moment, then asked, "Have you arrived in Minglai yet?" "No, didn't you say you'd leave tomorrow?" There was a hint of confusion in Xiao Yu's voice. Before Chen Chen could answer, she continued to ask, "Why? Did you catch him? Has the situation changed?" "Yes." Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh again. This was the time when he sighed the most and most frequently in this period of time. Something happened? Xiao Yu was keenly aware of his emotions, and his tone became serious. Something happened. Chen Chen answered helplessly. How big? It's hard to say how big it is. But I have two pieces of news. Which one do you want to hear first? Which is the good news? There is no good news, only bad news, some big and some small. Then tell them one by one, starting with the big one. Clear. Chen Chen paused for a few seconds, then said, the kidnapping case of Huame Commercial Bank is not that simple. It looks like a business competition, but it involves Bang Ningzwang and Kachin. Judging from the method, it is very likely related to the Wenbang organization. I suspect that the Kachin's tentacles in northern Myanmar are not limited to Banglong. There are also traces of their infiltration in Hua State and even other places. But it's within expectations. Fortunately, it's still under control. Xiaoyu was obviously relieved, and his tone became relaxed again. This is a very normal thing. Sometimes you may think it is just a small thing, but there may be a big thing behind it. Or to put it bluntly, there are no small things in northern Myanmar. Haven't you heard that saying? Those individual, special, and unique events are nothing more than the superficial flashes of some huge system. This sentence is the most appropriate to describe northern Myanmar. There was a hint of comfort in Xiaoyu's words, but Chen Chen really didn't feel comforted. He just hummed and then continued. There is one more news. You say, don't be so nervous. Why are you nervous too? It's just a catch-in. Isn't that right? Or are you worried about their revenge? Don't worry, they know. I think I beat the sad guy to death. Silence. Silence is Hyuko tonight, as well as Munka. The silence was so long that Chen Chen even thought there was something wrong with the signal. When he took down the satellite phone to check it in confusion, Xiaoyu's voice, which was suppressed but still contained a bit of shock, came from the receiver. Tell me again, who did you kill? SAD, CIA Special Operations Division. How do you know it's them? They were holding all new guns, 17 Malawian kwaches and 416 Hong Kong dollars, and they were wearing dragon scale armor. All white. They're all white. That I told you yesterday what to do so that we can at least be prepared. I can't do anything. They want to kill people and silence them. I want to stop them. By the time I saw their guns clearly, it was too late. How many were killed? 6. Chen Chen answered with a little hesitation, but to his surprise, after giving this answer, the little fish on the opposite side immediately relaxed. You scared me to death, Xiaoyu cursed, which was rare, and then continued to ask, 6 people are a team? How is the coordination? It is definitely a mature team, with high coordination. That's all right. Xiaoyu let out a long sigh and said, these 6 people cannot be SADs. They don't have such a high star quota this year. Note 1, it's not just the SEALs that can get the 17 Malawian kwaches. At the end of last year, SOCOM announced that it would cancel the SCAR purchase plan. FNH was not convinced and sent a batch of guns to MPRI for battlefield testing. Note 2, the vast majority of these guns are in the hands of MPRI's elite frontline teams, mainly deployed in the Middle East, with the purpose of testing the reliability of the gas piston control system in a dusty environment. Do you have one of their guns? Take the upper and lower receivers apart and check for the typical signs of sandwear. Chen Chen immediately grabbed his SCAR, and without even taking it apart, he could see the obvious paint damage under the light. Those fine, granular scratches are really obviously caused by sand and dust wear. There are obvious traces. He spoke. That's MPRI. Combined with your previous judgment, what the red blood cell said is most likely referring to this. This should be MPRI's, coaching staff. I was so unlucky. I just arrived in northern Myanmar and was beaten to death by you before I could even finish the show battle. After hearing Xiaoyu's words, Chen Chen was finally completely relieved. That's great. It seems like this time I'm not unlucky, but lucky. You're right. SAD is not easy to mess with. Do you think MPRI is easy to mess with? Do you think the one you killed was not a SEAL? They just took off their badges. That's better than SAD. Chen Chen argued cunningly. Forget it, you're lucky. At least you got the sign removed. If you hit someone wearing a badge, there really is no one who can help you. That's it, hang up. I want to sleep. You can still sleep? What's the matter with you not being able to sleep? A fight between 2 mercenary groups is none of our business. Go to sleep. Good night. With a click, the phone was hung up. Chen Chen put away the phone and a vicious smile appeared on his face. Damn it, after all this trouble, it still falls on the heads of the Shadow Legion. What an idiot. You scared your dad to death. Note FNH is the company that produces 17 Malawian kwaches. SOCOM is the U.S. Special Operations Command, the administrative superior of the Navy SEALs. After getting Xiaoyu's reply, Chen Chen's condition improved visibly. When he walked back to the camp and came to the other 5 people, the expression on his face had returned to his usual calmness. Everyone, including Shi Dekai, noticed his change, and the atmosphere in the entire group, which had been tense to the point of almost breaking apart, suddenly relaxed. Solved? Shi Dekai asked. It's not solved, but it's better than I expected. Chen Chen replied. So, who are those 6 people? The guns they use are weird, their shooting style is weird, and their skills are weirdly high. I feel like if it wasn't an ambush, if we didn't have 2 machine guns, we wouldn't have been able to hold out that long. Also, although we have 2 machine guns, they're almost broken when we hit the back. Li Bang, who was standing aside, said a lot of words, which was rare. He was undoubtedly the one who felt the most deeply about the danger of the game between the 2 sides across the wall at that time. Because holding the PKMS, he is the absolute firepower center among the 4 people. He can deeply understand that if his trajectory deviates from a certain direction, even for just 1 second, the opponent's bullet will bite him as quickly as a poisonous snake. No enemy he had fought before had such ability. Even in the entire northern Myanmar, he couldn't think of any team that could actually have such ability. He was a little scared after being beaten, and even a little terrified. If I run into such a team again and engage in a head-on battle with it, can I really survive? Li Bang didn't want to think too much, but looked at Chen Chen with complicated eyes. Chen Chen naturally noticed his change in mood, so he reached out and patted his shoulder and said, Don't worry, you are already very strong. Because the person we killed was most likely a Navy SEAL. What? As soon as the words fell, everyone froze in place. What SEAL? Are you talking about the SEAL I'm thinking of? Baoqi looked at Chen Chen in astonishment and asked in disbelief. Yes, it's that SEAL, but a retired SEAL. They are most likely an elite unit from MPRI, whose members are originally composed of former Special Forces members such as Navy SEALs and Delta. I don't know how many SEALs are in there, but judging by their equipment, it should be most of them. So actually, we just killed an entire team of the world's strongest former Special Forces combat team. That is to say, no matter how difficult the process is, being able to defeat them has already fully proved our strength. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but gasp. A local mercenary group in northern Myanmar killed a special operations team composed of former Navy SEALs? This sounds like the Arabian Nights. But the thing is, it really happened. Although it was not a fair and square annihilation, and although there was some opportunistic elements in the case of equipment suppression, who the hell cares? Just kill them. I can find armored vehicles and heavy machine guns. That's my ability. In an instant, everyone's mood changed. They no longer care about threats or consequences. There was only one thing left for them to care about. Shit, we killed the SEAL. If they can all die, who else can't die? At this moment, a kind of detached mentality inexplicably emerged in the hearts of this team. That is, looking at northern Myanmar, I am invincible. This mentality is undoubtedly good. But of course, even if the mentality can be invincible, one still needs to be cautious in actions. Especially now, the MPRI guidance group was probably just arrived in northern Myanmar not long ago and was suddenly killed by the Dongfeng Corps. No matter what, they will not let it go. At least be prepared for their revenge, or at least make a plan to put an end to this matter once and for all. Chen Chen returned to the side of the plunderer, and while thinking, he took out all the guns in the car, sorted them out one by one, and put them in the makeshift weapons box. Sure Dakai stood beside him and asked curiously, "What kind of money is this? It looks like a rifle, but the bullet is very heavy. I was shot once, and it was a ricochet that was blocked by the cover, but it felt like being hit by a machine gun. Ordinary rifles can't fire this kind of bullet, right?" Chen Chen nodded and replied, "Yes, this is a new gun that was issued last year, the 17 Malawing Quaches or Scar H. This gun can just replace the SVD in your hand. To be honest, the bullets are relatively easy to find. You can just use the M249 bullets. This way, you don't have to carry a sniper rifle or a rifle on ordinary missions, and you can have a better automatic weapon free. Then I'll practice when I get back. Would that be too high profile?" Sure Dakai continued to ask, "No matter how high profile it is, these 6 people were beaten to death today, and the investigation will eventually lead to us. We are already at war with the Shadow Corps and MPRI. They will definitely retaliate against us on a large scale. I don't know whether this is good news or bad news. It must be good news." Sure Dakai continued seriously. "That way, we'll have a good reason to take them out. What you said does make sense. However, the Shadow Army is not the trash team we fought before. They are very strong and will be continuously strengthened by MPRI in the future. In short, we will probably have to fight for some time to come, but the form of the conflict will change from large-scale battles where wolves invade the flock of sheep to small-scale conflicts between elite teams. If it's not handled properly, people will die very quickly." There was a hint of worry in Chen Chen's words. After a brief pause for thought, he said, "So the plan is now very clear. We have to wrap up the kidnapping case first, then we'll go back and recruit more people and train them. We don't want to train our team to have the same combat effectiveness as the Navy SEALs, but at least with the advantage of heavy equipment, we must be able to fight against the MPRI. Clear?" Sure Dakai answered decisively, but then asked, "Hasn't the clue to the kidnapping case been cut off? How can we wrap it up?" Broken ass. There was a hint of anger in Chen Chen's eyes. "Huamei Trading Company. So you didn't tell the truth at all. He must know who is looking for him, and he must know how big the threat is. I was saying, in a shabby place like northern Myanmar offering a $5 million bounty for a daughter. Is he really that kind of a father? This money is spent just to attract more cannon fodder. Zhao Jingyi is right about this. Suyu is really not a good person. In that case, we have to have a good talk with him." The follow-up plan was initially drawn up, and Chen Chen did not delay any longer. Instead, he got back in the car after a brief rest and drove the Predator eastward. It took him more than 5 hours to get back to Mungka. This is his safest hometown. There is Hua State as a barrier in the north. He Bongxiong of the 756th Brigade blocking the traffic in the south, and the 7th Brigade is stationed in Mungka City, with Chasely and Wanfeng Group as support. Even if the Shadow Legion wants to take action, they have to consider whether they can find the entry point in such a complex force and then retreat smoothly after fighting a strong enemy. In general, although Mungka is not an impregnable fortress, it is at least a moat that the enemy must pay a price to cross. When we arrived at Mungka, it was already past 6 in the morning. Xiaoyu, who said he wanted to sleep, didn't seem to really fall asleep, or he woke up early after falling asleep. In short, when Chen Chen got out of the car, the first thing he saw was Xiaoyu's face, which was filled with anger, helplessness, resentment, but also a hint of worry. He smiled awkwardly, walked forward and said, "I'm sorry, I've caused trouble for the organization again." "You know that yourself?" Xiaoyu clicked his tongue twice, then asked, "What are you thinking? Don't you try to confirm their identities before you do anything? If you keep fighting like this, there will definitely be big problems in the future." Xiaoyu's tone was a little harsh, but Chen Chen knew that this was really a very realistic advice. Before this, the Dongfeng Corps had indeed fought too recklessly. No matter whether you are ethnic armed groups, the Burmese regular army, or drug dealers, anyone who stands in the way will be shot to pieces without hesitation. This way of doing things undoubtedly rapidly improved the combat effectiveness of the Dongfeng Corps, but at the same time, it also led to the consequences becoming more serious each time. Before, when they attacked the Bai family and the Mangdamba military camp, Chen Chen had carefully arranged to balance the various forces and barely cover the consequences. But as the forces involved became more and more powerful, what if they couldn't cover it one day? After all, even if it was the 4 masters and apprentices who went to the west to obtain the scriptures, killing the spider spirit and the white bone spirit would be fine. But if they really killed the yellow eyebrow king, the 9 spirits Yuansheng, the golden winged Diping bird, and the like without caring about anything, then everyone would lose face. So, Chen Chen did not talk back but replied modestly. The situation this time is very special, and there is not much time for deliberation in the decision-making process. When I first saw them, my instinct was to stop them from killing people because, rationally speaking, a business that deserves a professional team to kill people to silence them must have a secret that is more than just a kidnapping case. So, I have to stop them. We didn't intend to go too far, but once the fight started, the opponent's strength was far beyond our imagination. There's nothing we can do. Things are like an avalanche. Once the first shot is fired, there's no stopping it. Shidakai was nearly beaten to death. Li Bang and Sang Yi were nearly blown to death. If we were a second slower, we would have been wiped out. After hearing what Chen Chen said, Xiaoyu opened her mouth as if wanting to say something, but finally retracted it. As she said, this matter was fortunately limited to 2 commercial mercenary groups. It might have a considerable impact on the situation, but it was still controllable. In that case, there is really no reason for me to blame Chen Chen too much. Our position is clear, and we cannot be overbearing. So, she just lightly skipped over the topic and said, it's a good thing you were wearing a neck guard, otherwise you would have been killed by a stray bullet. That's not the case. I'm lucky. I was born to be immune to bullets. Chen Chen replied with a chuckle. Xiaoyu's eyes were rolling up to the sky. She didn't bother to say anything more and turned to leave, but was stopped by Chen Chen again. Wait a moment. There's someone here to take care of it for you. As he spoke, Chen Chen signaled Li Bang to pull Zhao Jingyi out of the plunderer. Who is this? Xiaoyu asked doubtfully. The leader of the evil gang that ran over from your side was convicted of smuggling, illegal border crossing, murder, and kidnapping. He could be sentenced to death. I'll give it to you. It's not easy to come here. Take some local specialties back. Okay, good. Xiaoyu signaled to the 2 security guards behind him, who decisively took out cable ties and tied Zhao Jingyi's hands behind his back. There was confusion and surprise in their eyes, but more than that, they were curious about Chen Chen. The way this mercenary does things is really hard for them to understand. But who cares? Anyway, it's a credit, and this trip to Mungka was not in vain. But, no matter from which angle you look at it, the type of gifts this guy gave to girls was a bit too strange. After the suspect was handed over, Chen Chen began to prepare for the follow-up. Suyu from Huamei Trading Company had to go and have a chat, but this time, he didn't plan to go in person. The first point is because of security issues. The Shadow Legion and MPRI are not fools. They know the core of the problem, so they must have already set their sights on Huamei Trading Company. If I go there now, I will be putting myself in danger. As for the second point, the relationship with Bao Xiaomei, or the relationship with Hua State still needs to be managed. Even if Xiaoyu asks him to stay away from her, he can't really keep her at a distance all the time. If that happens, your path will be narrowed. Since we want to run the business, the best way is not to help them do things, but to let them help you do things. If you owe them a favor that is neither big nor small, then in the future, when both sides deal with each other again, they will have a reason and an entry point. This was also a common social etiquette. After all, Chen Chen had worked in a government agency before, so he was not unfamiliar with it. So, he decisively called Bao Xiaomei and made an appointment. At lunchtime, the 2 met in a room at the Vientiane Hotel. Bao Xiaomei was wearing a casual, loose outfit that was obviously a bit too loose. However, there was nothing unusual about Chen Chen's behavior. He just politely and courteously explained his purpose and expressed his demands. Of course, he would never mention anything about seals or SAD. So this Huamei commercial bank might actually have some big problems? Bao Xiaomei's eyes were always focused on Chen Chen's eyes. Chen Chen did not avoid the question, but answered solemnly. This is our guess. Based on various clues, the possibility is very high. So, getting rid of Huamei Commercial Bank will benefit both of us. After all, you still have to rely on that side. And over there, they don't want to see this kind of thing exist. That's right. Bao Xiaomei smiled and nodded, then changed the subject and asked, but helping Mr. Xinchuan solve his problems is more important, right? Yes, that's right. Chen Chen answered frankly, without any affectation. Then I'll ask for an exorbitant price. Bao Xiaomei smiled even more. Mr. Sinking Ship, if I help you solve this matter, you have to give me something, right? Bao Xiaomei's words were full of hints, but Chen Chen didn't respond to her at all. He simply threw out a few follow-up battle plans and brought Bao Xiaomei back to the scope of official business. Regardless of whether Bao Xiaomei was willing or not, a consensus was finally reached on this matter. Now that a consensus has been reached, both parties need to determine the schedule and start working. Bao Xiaomei immediately set off for Mengyang to arrange the invitation for Suyu, while Chen Chen turned back to prepare a surprise attack on the reservoir drug dealers, as well as a series of subsequent larger-scale strikes. However, before officially starting to do this, Chen Chen must first find a way to ensure the safety of the entire Dongfeng Corps, especially its formal safety. Therefore, he called Peng Diren and asked him to make the incident of Jingyi Commercial Bank into a tragedy in which both the security guards and the attackers suffered losses. Although it was a little late, Peng Diren had regained control of Kokong. Now he had the military power and administrative district in his hands, and basically what he said was what went. Soon, the TV news reported that a team of foreign mercenaries attempted to attack the Kingshui Trading Company, were resisted by heavy machine guns, and were destroyed together with the security personnel in the trading company. Not only Kokong, but the whole northern Myanmar paid attention to this news. After the news was broadcast, in the command room of the Shadow Corps branch in Banglong, the man named Red Cell's eyes were almost popping out. Peng Diren, is he fucking kidding me? The elite assault team of MPRI was completely wiped out by a security guard of a business? This is a team of 4 SEALs and 2 Deltas. Where does he think this is? This is fucking northern Myanmar. The assault team is going to attack Jingyi Commercial Bank, not fucking Polytechnology. How could those mercenaries who were paid to stand guard have such fighting power? How could this be done by the security guards of the business? He really thinks we are fools, Peng Diren. Damn it. I really want to kill his whole family. Hearing his words, the adjutant beside him showed a slightly nervous expression on his face. He coughed and said, Captain, don't be too impulsive. This is obviously just a cover-up. In fact, we don't even need to go to the scene to check it out. We can guess who did this, right? The scouts have reported back that there are traces of thermite grenades and M67 grenades used at the scene, and SVD shells were found at the enemy sniper's hiding place. Most importantly, the only team member who was directly killed was killed by 416 Hong Kong dollars. The only one in northern Myanmar that has 416 Hong Kong dollars is the Dongfeng Corps. I know it's them. I don't need you to remind me. Red Cell waved his hands angrily, and then continued. The issue that concerns me most now is how to report to the headquarters. This assault team was originally used to launch the IMET plan, but they were wiped out as soon as they arrived in northern Myanmar. It's not like they were completely wiped out. The adjutant interrupted the Red Cell and carefully reminded him. Their commander is still in Jingdong. That's no different than a total annihilation, or even worse, okay. Red Blood Cell's head was about to explode. He could already foresee the scene where the headquarters would be furious, interrogate him severely, and finally deduct a large bonus. Yes, he doesn't really care about the life or death of those former Special Forces members. He only cares about his own wallet. However, the adjutant's next words gave him a feeling of enlightenment. Captain, you are wrong. This team has never really had any contact with us since it arrived in northern Myanmar. They just arrogantly took the intelligence from us and tried to have an easy hunt, but ended up getting killed by their prey. What does this have to do with us? In any case, it was their negligence in command. I think this is actually a good thing. MPRI will definitely send more people here. They must send more people here to recover their loss of reputation. And the next group of people coming here won't be so unruly, right? The Red Blood Cell suddenly realized. You mean we can control them? That's right. Such negative cases are perfect opportunities for us to rise to the top. If we seize this opportunity, we can gain greater benefits for the headquarters and the Shadow Corps. I think the boss won't refuse. The Red Blood Cell's eyes gradually lit up. After a few seconds of silence, he said, please help me get through to the boss. I'll talk to him. Also, we need to make a detailed plan. A plan targeting the Dongfeng Corps. No, we can't be impatient. They're a very strong mercenary group, very, very strong. If we rush and without any preparation, it will only bring us irreparable losses. 1 month. Give us 1 month to prepare. Then, after the new IMET team arrives, we will launch the attack. Before that, keep an eye on Huame Commercial Bank and get rid of all the things that need to be dealt with. Clear. The adjutant nodded, but then asked, did I understand the meaning of dispose of correctly? No, it's just what you think. Okay, I'll do it right away. That night, a small-scale battle took place near the Huame Commercial Bank in the main urban area of Mengyang. Compared with the conflict between the Dongfeng Corps and the number 1 IMET group, this battle was not very intense, and the casualties were not great. After one side broke into the building, the battle ended quickly with a one-sided trend. However, what this massed assault team did not expect was that they did not find their target inside the Huame Trading Company at all. All the active targets had been slaughtered, but when they compared them one by one according to the photos and feature information in their hands, they found that the most critical number 1 person they were looking for had long disappeared without a trace. This is very unusual, even impossible, because just the night before, the team members responsible for surveillance reported that there was nothing abnormal in the target person's activities. In just one night he woke up. Not only did he wake up, but he even arranged everything and took his family away. Huame Commercial Bank might have such ability, but it definitely didn't have the ability to do it to this extent in such a short time. Someone must be helping them. In other words, it is a force. Was stake. After this information was confirmed, the mercenaries involved in the encirclement and suppression withdrew decisively, returned empty-handed. To them, the action was a failure. But on the other hand, for the Dongfeng Corps, the operation of achieving the goal without using force for the first time has been a success. Because Suyu, the boss of Huame Trading Company, was sitting in front of Chen Chen at this time. He had just been sent here an hour ago. At this moment, he didn't know the identity of the man in front of him, let alone that this was the legendary Dongfeng Corps. He thought that this was just a mercenary arranged by Bao Xiaomei to pick him up. Looking at Suyu's calm, even somewhat arrogant expression, Chen Chen shook his head. He slammed FN 57 on the table and said, next, you answer whatever I ask. I'm not like other people. Bringing you here today is to save your life. But I can also take your life at any time. If you don't believe me, then I'll have to ask you to go down and ask by Suacheng, Ming Xuechang, Lu Jingxiang, and Nuakong in person.